What's up, everyone? Welcome to Normal America Show. Host robnoerr, finally back home. I'm so happy to be back home with my family. Got a good show lined up tonight. Tonight is my interview show, which I forget some of the names people have suggested. I'm going to decide on a name here soon. Let's see what was suggested. Some of these names. Normalizing American or normalizing America isn't bad. It's pretty good. Anyways, I'm muted. Can you all hear me? Check, check, check. Someone let me know if you could hear me. On my end, it's showing up that things are working. So hopefully things are working. So let me know. Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me? Let me type in. Sounds good. Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. It's professional. Yeah, there you go. My boy, my producer Aftershock, screwing me up already. There you have it. See, I got some news to announce. Sprouticus will be coming on at 9:30. Normally, we do the interview shows on Thursday, but tomorrow night I'm going to see Christmas lights in a town about an hour away, getting a hotel room, and then the Friday after that, the Friday morning, we're going to see Santa Claus with my son Hank, so I'm excited. So I will not be streaming tomorrow evening. So Sprouticus was generous enough to bump up the interview to today. Just a reminder, Friday, I will be streaming early. It'll be 7 p.m. instead of the normal 9 p.m. time. So tune in for that. I actually have a debate lined up with someone named Crowdsource Politics. First hour, whatever topic he decides. The second hour is the topics I decide. I'm not sure what topics he'll decide. He hasn't told me. I've made no secret about what topics I want to talk to him about, particularly FBI corruption in January 6th, because he was sort of speaking about January 6th in erroneous ways on Twitter, and I asked if he would like to talk about it, and he said no. He only wanted to talk about policy. But if I would talk to him about whatever policy he wants, he would talk about January 6th. Am I going to be taking time off for Christmas? Probably. It's something. Maybe I'll do a small stream. Christmas is what? It's a Sunday, I believe. I don't know. But yeah, I doubt I'll be streaming Christmas Day. But mostly not. The holidays are a hectic time for me because I got a lot of family, as I'd already explained. Plus, my wife's birthday is New Year's Eve. My son's birthday is January 9th. A dear friend of mine's birthday is January 6th. And so it's those 2 weeks or so there. It gets pretty hectic, but we'll do what we can. So yeah, interview with Sprouticus tonight. Debate 7 p.m. Friday. No stream tomorrow. A couple things that I would ask you to check out before we talk a little politics, and then we'll get Sprouticus in here. If you could check out for me a couple of things. First would be, if you go to rumble.com, I would like you to check out my friend John Burk. Now, I have an interview that I'd done with John Burk. The live stream is up there on YouTube. I will be uploading the non-live stream version with the thumbnail and all of that good stuff. I will be uploading that sometime this weekend. That'll be coming up. Maybe tomorrow it'll be uploaded. But I called into John Burk's podcast today, which he streams live to Rumble. And I'm going to put the link to that there. That's his podcast. The whole thing wasn't me, but I'm a big chunk of it. I think I was like an hour and 40 minutes. I did an interview, so check that out. We covered a litany of topics, including sort of who's to blame for Republican failures in the Senate, good things about Trump, failures of Trump, Disney, Bob Iger, using Disney as a platform to attack the Second Amendment. So we cover a lot there, and I think it's something that you guys will really like. So check that out. I'll talk about that interview in a second here as well. Secondly, if you don't mind, I've been trying to put videos up to YouTube. on a daily basis. Those videos also upload to Rumble and places like that. But let me see. If you check out my YouTube page, you'll see that today I put 2 videos up. And if you don't mind giving them a check out, they were already uploaded to Twitter previously, but they're about the Twitter files drop, so I thought maybe people would be interested in them. So I'll put those links. Thanks, Coda Bear. You saw me on John Burke's show. Excellent. Bob Igor said that he wants to use his position as the head of Disney, basically as someone who has children or knows children, that he thinks the only ethical thing he could do in that position is to advocate for gun control. So we talked about that. So there's one of the videos. And then the other video I put up today is about bad candidates and bad leadership from the Republican Party being responsible. Now, screw YouTube. I understand YouTube shadow bans me and demonetizes me and straight up bans me and gives me community strikes and things like that. But I am making a commitment to, on Rumble, and it's going to be Rumble more than YouTube here shortly, but Rumble and YouTube, to put those short form, like 4-minute videos up there. And I've been on YouTube for a long time. I understand I have more viewers on Twitch and I have more viewers for my live stream content, but it is frustrating. Like, I'll do these, videos. I cut all of my guests and put all of them up as their own individual video from my 24-hour live stream. And, I end up with 20 views. So it's a little frustrating, but I don't care. I'm not complaining. I'll keep plugging away. But if you really wanted to help me out, even more than giving me money and stuff, share those videos with your friends or just check it out because you're not going to get notified on somewhere like YouTube. And also, one last thing, if I could ask for you all, would you consider subscribing to me on my Rumble account? I would really appreciate it. In order to live stream on Rumble, I have to have 100 subscribers. And I don't believe subscribing costs any money there. So you'd be doing me a huge favor, even if you never check it out, just to subscribe. So that would be another place that I could actually live stream. So I'll put the user. See if this, I'll put this up and someone tells me if this links to it. So yeah, I'll mention that again today at some point, but that's what I'm pushing. Trying to get 100 subs on Rumble. I think that's a goal well within our reach. And then I will still be streaming to all the platforms I am, but also I want to start streaming on Rumble. I think it's important that I'm streaming on Comfy. I'm trying to get bugs worked out in Comfy, such as I need to find it so Comfy's chat shows up on the screen here. That's something that I am working on. And so we'll eventually get that. But Rumble is another good option that's promoting free speech, live streaming, and video services. And it's really worked well for John Burke. Yeah, I'm close. I got 78. So that's within a few days, I could conceivably get to 100 subs on Rumble. Again, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. So except maybe some of your self-esteem or something like that. But John Burke's doing terrific. And let me just talk a little about John Burke for a moment. He did an interview with me, a live stream the other day. I think my audience really liked it. I've known John for quite some time. I met him when I used to do a show called Drunken Debates. John is a veteran who's, had quite a successful YouTube channel, was quite a successful Twitch channel. He was the only person that I've interacted with online that my father-in-law watches, so that was good. I got in good with my wife's dad, which is kind of good. Very interesting guy, a man of many talents, and, entrepreneur, started up his own business. It's worth, millions of dollars now. So pretty cool guy. Video essay type. That's something I've thought about. I'm going to try something like that. There's a lot of ideas I have kicking around. I just got to find time. But yeah, it's a great point. Thank you, Snyder, SMDR. I really appreciate it. Anyways, John got booted off all those platforms. He got booted off YouTube. He got booted off Twitch. And so instead of whining and complaining, he went to Rumble. John's live stream today on Rumble while I was on there had 650 people when I looked. I mean, that's an impressive live stream audience for a, afternoon show. That's very impressive. And I would recommend that I already put a link up to the video I did with John today, and you could, from there, obviously you could subscribe to John's channel. He is Central Time, so it's noon Central Time. For me, it would be 1 p.m. Eastern Time. He's, I believe, every weekday. Him and his co-host Josh are doing that podcast, and they take call-ins, so you could do calls. So please consider supporting him. But one of the questions I want to ask is, John, and I think John and I have a good rapport. We have a good back and forth with each other. John is a much bigger streamer than me. And he is graciously asked if at the start of the new year here, if I would be interested in doing a weekly show with him. And it would be streamed only to Rumble. And it would be me and his show. We would be co-host. And I wanted to gauge people's interest in a venture like that. The purpose would be we would put on a good show together. I think that we have a good rapport, and it would be a fantastic show. We would be able to cover news stories of the week. We could bring on guests. We could even bring on people that disagree with us to debate. That would be fine. So that would be one. I think it would just be good, informative show and good entertainment that both John and I would enjoy, and hopefully an audience would enjoy. It would help me by introducing me to a larger audience, and it would also direct people to Rumble. Maybe I would live stream it to Comfy as well. I would have to talk to John about that. But trying to drive people away from Twitch, from YouTube, when at all possible, because, as I've said a million times, it's not if, it's when I get banned from these platforms. And I am incredibly appreciative of all of the money and all of the donations that people have given me through any platform. It is incredibly generous. But understand, YouTube and Twitch are taking huge portions of that. And that's fine. You understand that as, a service, that you're going to take a portion of that money. But the problem with YouTube and Twitch taking that money is they are ran by people that hate me. They're ran by people that hate you, right? They despise my politics. They'll kick me off as soon as I become noticeable. Changing chat fonts. No one's ever recommended it to me. I could probably do that. No problem. Let's see. I might be able to do it now. Let's see. Appearance. I don't know. I'll work that out for you. Sure. Didn't know it was a problem. I thought it was kind of unique, the word bubble stuff, but yeah. So I'll ask again. I'll bring it up later in the show. But I think that would be a good opportunity, and hopefully it's something that my audience would be interested in. I've been trying to do a lot of different things. Yesterday I did 2 Twitter spaces when I went and talked to people. Yeah, Twitch is dying. Look, BPF called this out. The people that run Twitch, they don't care at all about the politics. They don't. Love to watch a show that get Tim Pool's guests with. I would still love to do Tim Pool's show. I think that'd be good exposure for me. But let me talk briefly here. Yeah, no problem, Levi. I will absolutely look into changing that. I think I can't do it while I'm live is the problem. But I absolutely will look into changing that to something more comfortable that's easier to see. In fact, one of the things I might be able to do while I'm streaming is increase the font size. Let's try that. Let's see what happens. Oh no, that increases the font size for me on my little screen, but not for you all. Okay, that's no good. But I'll work on that. Restream chat. Now I'm just going to have to let it go for now, Levi, or else I'll be sitting here struggling with it the whole stream like the boomer I am, going, oh, I can't figure this out. So I'll mess with that after the stream. So I talked about this a little yesterday. There was a big Twitter Spaces. For those that don't know, Twitter Spaces is sort of an audio-only group you could create when you're on Twitter, and it allows people to join that space as a listener, and then the host of the space can bring people in as speakers. So you could have like a room where, it's similar to the panel shows you would see, except it's audio only, and there could be 8 to 10 people speaking, or more than that, or less than that, etc., etc. And so anyone that follows you on Twitter could see at the top of their feed when you're basically live on Twitter. That's called a Twitter Space. And there's a big one called the Round Table that's ran by some guy, Mario something, and Ian Mouse Chung, and I think Elon went on there to talk about the Twitter files at one point. I was unimpressed with sort of the discussion regarding the Twitter files, and what I saw is not really getting in depth with it. And I'm going to brag about myself here for a minute. I think I'm a pretty humble person, but I think I also have to be honest. I think that I'm very good at what I do. I really do. Yesterday, there was a gentleman by the name of Mark who ran for Senate in Ohio. He did a Twitter Space. There was only like 4 people on there. I went on and talked. I think that I purported myself very well. And then after I was done streaming last night, Steven, I forget his last name. He's got like 80,000 Twitter subscribers. He has a YouTube show. He was doing a Twitter Space. And I patiently waited for an hour and a half to be able to speak. And there was probably 8 to 10 speakers in front of me. And I think that you could see that sort of the depth of understanding of the Twitter files and the quality of communication going on about it markedly increased when I was able to speak. And I think that I need to focus on increased exposure because I think that I have the talent to draw an audience and be able to talk about these things in a way that is sort of unique and in a way that could draw in an audience and a breadth of issues. So instead of being humble all the time, I'm trying to continue that humility and understanding that there are all sorts of awesome people, but also understand that I really think that if I make a push for increased exposure and while at the same time consistency of streaming and doing what I can to up my production values, I think that there will be, exactly, Sweet Tit, yeah. Yeah, they did keep skipping over me. Did you notice that? I think that that's something that I'm going to focus on. So I'm going to be doing once Alex Stein's show starts up on The Blaze, he said he'll have me on as a guest. Adam and Sitch asked me if I would do their show next Tuesday. I said yes, but there are problems. Like my computer being dead, and I won't be at my home office. So maybe I'll take next Tuesday off work if they get back to me. But they must be very busy because oftentimes they'll private message me, and then I'll respond, and then I don't hear from them for 24 hours. So thank you. I'm not that young. I'm 38, but thank you. Rush was the best. I think working with John Burk is also something that I'll really enjoy. And, I think it'll be fun for both of us and great to increase sort of that viewership. I think there is a market for, there are people that do it well. Jesse Kelly's show is good. Dan Bongino's show is good. Obviously, Tucker's the king as far as, what I would consider a populist right-wing audience. But I think that there's a market glut, there is, I guess glut's not the right word. There is space in the market for someone like me. So one of the things I wanted to talk real quick, we're going to talk to Sprouticus. We haven't really picked a topic. Sprouticus, someone I've interacted with several times. I think it'll go good. He's an interesting guy. He's someone that was hosting panel shows, and then I believe through serving in our military had to put that on hiatus. I'll ask him specifically what happened, but I believe it was either a job, but I think it was service, some sort of public service like the military, National Guard or something like that. Thank you, Milwaukee's Best. I remember being on a panel with you, yeah. It's not that, right? The thing is this, here's something to understand. I say this all the time. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. You should, Christopher Hitchens said, treat all humans as if they're mammals. Or another way of saying that, my grandpa told me once, you're not better than anyone and no one's better than you. And if you remember that, if you know what you're talking about, even if you're talking about it in a way that is very rudimentary, you could hang with anyone. You really can. I sound like a really impressive debater because that's something that I was involved with, right? But if I would debate you on what sort of engine to put into a pickup truck, you would destroy me. If I was to debate you on, what would have been the best tactical maneuver in the War of 1812, I'd get destroyed. I just happen to have an ability, because I'm a good speaker, that I could talk on a breadth of issues. But even someone who's a terrible speaker, if they just straight up know more than you through their life experience, there's no need to be like, oh, I wouldn't fuck with you in an argument, because if you just have confidence in your understanding of the issue, and oftentimes, I think people make the mistake of saying, well, I'm not a good public speaker, I don't have much to add. Some of the most resounding life advice and political ideology statements that I've ever heard come from people that don't follow politics at all, that didn't graduate high school, that work 9 to 5 blue-collar jobs, and would self-deprecate to the point where they would be like, well, I don't know nothing, what do I know? So, but I do think I'm a good debater, having said all of that. Anyways, what I wanted to talk about, we'll be joining Sprouticus here in a couple minutes. I thought it would be interesting to talk about this. It's pseudo-politics related. Hasan, who on Twitch is the biggest political streamer, got a temporary ban on his channel. It's kind of interesting that this happened because he comes out and a bunch of lefties predictably come out and they're like, oh, I thought conservatives were all about being about free speech and against cancel culture. It's so funny to hear the people that have promulgated the idea of canceling people and keeping people off these spaces. It's so funny when predictably they get kicked off of spaces, or people they like get kicked off spaces, and the first thing they do is whine, I thought you guys were for free speech. We were. We absolutely were, and we continue to be for people that are mutually for free speech. But I talked about this on John Burk's show today. The idea that we have to keep saying, oh, no, free speech and no cancel culture and all of that. And they go, yep, and we believe canceling you. Free speech for us and none for you. And you believe free speech for everyone. Well, let's compromise. You'll be censored on half the things you could talk about and shadow banned, and we'll be able to say whatever we want. And then let's compromise again. Now you're censored 75% of the time. Like, that's not a winning strategy. So, I just think it's rich listening to people, the biggest left-wing streamer on Twitch when it comes to politics, gets censored, and it's temporary ban as far as I know. And all these leftists and all of his supporters are like, oh, what about the right wing? I thought they were for free speech. Sorry, live by the sword, die by the sword, I guess. The other thing is, I don't know exactly why he got censored, but what he's alleged to have done, I'd have to think about it, but probably is reason for a temporary ban. What he was alleged to have done was to be watching Gavin McInnes's show while Gavin was watching Kanye and then streaming that. But Gavin shows behind a paywall. In other words, you're giving away a product that people have to pay for free. It would be the equivalent of if I was live streaming the UFC fight. If I'm live streaming it on Twitch, and I had to pay $40 to do it, and I pay that money, and then I live stream it, you can understand why, as a business, Twitch is going to be like, you can't do that. And even if I do that, the rules should apply equally for me and Hasan or anyone else. But think of it this way. Hasan's going to have 30, 40,000 people watching. If I do that, I'm going to have 40 people watching. That's still money out of the pocket of the place that's selling the live stream. But I could honestly see being like, look, man, if I put stuff up behind a paywall and you're broadcasting it to 40,000 people, that conceivably hurts me financially. And if Twitch is like, well, we're fine with that, theoretically, there could be ramifications where, whoever that UFC in the example I'm giving could say, well, then we'll sue Twitch. If they're going to allow their streamers to broadcast our pay-per-views, we'll sue them. So Twitch is, for business practices, probably going to be like, you can't do that. It's in their terms of service. You cannot live stream things that are behind paywalls. You can't do that. Now, I don't think it's a permanent ban or anything. It should be for Hasan, but You can't do that. And I understand why, right? That's not a free speech issue as much as it is just like you're giving away a product for free. You can't really do that, you know? So I don't know. I thought it was interesting, but, all right, let's see if I can get Sprouticus lined up here and then we'll get moving. Probably bad for him to not be in here earlier. He's probably waiting for me. Ooh, he is not. Okay. You're going to lose me visually here for a minute, so forgive me for that, but I'll be right. You'll still be able to hear me. I'm still here. Don't freak out. I'm here for you. Don't worry. I'm all right. I haven't disappeared. I'm still here. Aftershock, if you're there, did he plan on doing this on Whereby? I hope so. There I am. Here I am. Just keep talking. You're scared because it's dark. I know. Aren't we all? Now we'll get accused of racism. You're saying dark things scare you? People that are darker complected? No, I'm not saying that. Let's see. What is all this shenanigans about? Oh, no, I don't want that. So reminder again, I'm going to post a couple links here while we're waiting for Sprouticus. Let me make sure he didn't hop on my Discord. Because sometimes people, no, I don't see him. Here's a YouTube video I did today, if y'all don't mind checking out. It's 4 minutes. Talking about Herschel Walker, and there's more videos up there. So I'm trying to put videos up. If you see me uploading videos, they'll probably be between 8 and 9 a.m. or 5 p.m. So either at 5 p.m. Eastern time or between 8 and 9 a.m. Eastern time. So I know you won't get notifications from somewhere like YouTube about me, but if you ever get bored, you can check the channel around those times. And if I was going to add anything that day, that's when it would be. So, so we're waiting on Sprout. Yeah, Drunken Debates was fun. I enjoyed doing them. John's talking about potentially bringing them back. That's a lot of work. I don't like that sort of production stuff. Aftershock does that for me. I'm so busy. I'm happy I have time to stream. I don't really have time. If I was doing a bunch of production, like lining up guests and stuff like that, I would probably only have time to stream half as much. Well, I know what I could show you. Here's a gift that I got from my wife that you may all be interested in. This was an early Christmas gift that I got. I'll show you here. She thought that it was very relevant to sort of the whole Twitter debacle going on. It's a quote from Thomas Jefferson. It says, "I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of society but the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education." In other words, we should leave power to the people. And if we think that the people aren't capable to maintain that power, censoring them and taking the power away from them isn't the answer. The answer is educating them. And I thought that really applied to what we see with this Twitter situation, where there's this whole movement from the Democratic Party to basically say, we can't handle free speech. Can't handle it. So my wife, as always, doing a great job. So there we go. Oh, I think he'll be ready here in a minute. He looked like he tried to join. Spotlight off. Spotlight on. Make sure. Oh, there we go. What's up, Sprout? How you doing, friend?
Doing good about yourself.
Good,
Excuse
good.
me. Doing
No
good.
problem. Let me get a couple things set up and then we'll go. We're live, but I like to record because I do a little mealy-mouthed rambling before, so I like to record these and then put them up as their own videos later. But thanks for doing this, man. I am so sorry that I had to reschedule from Thursday.
Yeah,
We're
no
getting a
problem.
hotel and going to look at Christmas lights tomorrow with my son, so I won't be around the house. So, but if you're ready to go, we'll get going. It's up to you, though.
Yeah, 1 second. I'm changing.
No problem.
something
Just
really
let me know.
quick. There we go. All right, I'm ready to go.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for joining me for my special Thursday interview show. We're going with the tentative name Normalizing America, going off the pun of my last name again. It was a suggestion from a supporter of mine, so I thought it was good for now. This is the third week that we're doing this. The idea of the show is to talk to people that aren't necessarily doing a debate with me, but people that I find interesting and kind of learning more about them and what they think about certain positions and kind of to focus more on their ideas instead of me running my mouth, as you always hear. I am joined today by someone that I've interacted with in the past many times. A person who wears several hats, was someone who put together panel debates, was an effective host at doing that, and was also a very effective debater. One of the few sort of conservative-minded people out there that would be on these panels with me, my friend Sprouticus. Thank you so much for being here today, Sprouticus. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate the introduction. That's a very flattering introduction. I'm Sprouticus. I've been Twitch Politics for, going on 2 years now. But no, it's been an exciting ride. It's been insane, these debates that I've been in, as Rob can probably attest to as well. But no, it's been insane, but it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. But it definitely takes a certain type of personality to kind of be here and to stick around. So.
Yeah, I agree. I thought one of the places I wanted to start, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this, but you were hosting a debate panel show, which I thought you were doing very well with, and then that had to come to some sort of hiatus. If I may be way off base, was that because of military service that you had to kind of put it on hiatus for a little?
Let's just put it this way. Someone figured out which unit I was in, and there were threats to tell commanding officers. And especially with something like that, it's really, really hard to do when you're putting people on that have views that you don't necessarily agree with, and that now they're blasting those views, and then the commander's going to look at that and see that as your product. And so it's really hard to kind of like separate the two and say, no, this isn't my product. These views don't represent me. And it was something hard and something that I didn't really want to explain. So it's gone to hiatus for a while. I am looking forward to bringing it back. I think that Twitch polls coming back, especially with the presidential election coming up. So I think Twitch polls going to come back. And I am looking forward to bringing that show back. It's just not quite yet.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk about something you didn't. I hadn't heard any of that. It is an unfortunate thing. I know that many panels I do, I end up getting mass reported as soon as I'm done with the panel. So all of a sudden I'll get 2 community strikes and 7 videos removed from 2 years ago on YouTube. Or other things that have happened. After one panel I did, someone followed me on Twitch and their name was my password. And my password's basically random characters and numbers. So they'd hack me. I had someone find my actual cell phone number and call me live. I saw it was a number that looked like kind of a local number, so I answered because I thought maybe it was work. No, it was something. And then I've had them contact my work and say that I'm a bigot and I'm a Nazi and stuff. So I totally understand. Yeah, it's frustrating. And I think you could tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think I'm putting words in your mouth. I think one of the reasons that someone like me's engaged in panels, and even more so someone like you held panels, was that you kind of value the idea of free speech and you value the idea of competing arguments, being able to hash it out. And so it's incredibly frustrating to see, you trying to have a platform where people of varying backgrounds could discuss and argue about issues. And there's sort of this, form of censorship trying to get you in trouble for having that. It's very frustrating.
It's frustrating to say the least, because not only is it frustrating that I can't do my show anymore, and then to add on to that, you have to worry about certain things. Like you have to worry about, I guess you have to worry about like other things being found out, right? So they've already found one thing out. What are they going to find out next? If you continue moving down this road, like what's next? What are they going to find next? And so that was something, and I apologize for this. So
it's no problem. No problem.
Second, I apologize. But that's definitely something that's come to mind. And it's something that I had to deal with, especially with having a family, and that kind of comes first. So was I willing to even debate anymore? Was I willing to just stream anymore? And those were questions that I had to ask myself. And I talked to my job. I let my job know that I stream. I let them know, like, hey, if you get some weird calls, like, this is what it's about. Like, this is my stream. If you want to look it up, this is what I do. I talk politics. I realize you may not agree with my politics, which is fine. That's what I'm all for, is disagreement of politics and being able to talk that out. And some people are just very, very vengeful. So if they don't like you, they're going to make sure that they're going to make sure that, and they're going to make sure it hurts. So eventually I came to basically the thought process that, you know what, it is what it is at a certain point. And you know what, people are going to hate, but I'm on here for a reason. And the reason I'm on here is not to back down when someone decides to get a little bit aggressive. So you come up with things that you can use towards basically protecting yourself and protecting your family, and strategies to do so, and then you implement those strategies and you move forward. So that's been my kind of thought process, is that I'm not going to let them stop me, because that's exactly what they want. They want me to stop streaming. They want me to stop doing this. I'm not going to let them stop me, even though that's exactly what they're aiming for.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better. That's absolutely correct. Someone in my chat wanted me to let you know your stream on your end may be down, so if you could want to check that out while we're...
I fixed it. I fixed it while I was talking. So my mic wasn't working and my camera wasn't working, and so I changed my scene, and now my mic's working, my camera's working. I'm good on my side.
Good deal. Good. So good deal. Yeah, it's one of those things, and there's a conundrum. I say this all the time. First off, I guess for the audience, how would you describe yourself politically? Would you call yourself a conservative? Are you Republican first? Do you put another label? I know labels are clunky, and none of us are ever going to have the same exact opinions, and that means no label is going to directly apply to any of us. But if you could just give people an idea as close as possible, is where you would say you align politically.
That's gonna be a difficult one. To be 100% honest, that's been something I've been wrestling with myself. So as you probably know, Rob, like throughout the beginning of me starting to debate on Twitch to now, some of my views have changed quite dramatically. And so I consider myself honestly a wild card. And it depends on the topic. So I lean more conservative, but I'm definitely genuine with my takes. I'm not gonna. There was a time in my life that I lived in echo chambers, and I decided, like, hey, listen, I'm gonna defend this because this is what I hear. This is what's being said, and I lived in kind of like this echo chamber. When I broke out of that echo chamber, there's a lot of stuff that was like changing my view on politics. It didn't change it like I wouldn't say overly dramatically, but it definitely changed enough for people to notice. And so at that point in time, it's just become a point where I am conservative, but that's not like I'm not going to toe the Republican line. I'm going to be genuine, and that's essentially where I lie, is that I'm conservative, but I'm going to be genuine about it. I'm not going to toe anyone's line.
Yeah, I think that it's something that I talk about a lot. I was just talking about it in a show I was doing earlier today. To me, um, I was a pretty good public speaker when I ran for Congress. There was like 24 people that ran in the special election than I did, and the top 10 got to speak at the conferee, basically the final conferee meeting, and I was in the top 10. So I got to speak, and I was the only person that got a standing ovation. People really liked the speech I gave, and the speech was very simple. It was basically joking and making fun of myself, but then telling these audience of career politicians, listen, we're tired of you going to Washington and ignoring us. And there are country bumpkins like me out there that are making $15 an hour doing these, jobs that aren't making a bunch of money. We're going to come for your job. If you can't, we're not stupid. We're not, dumb rubes that are just here for your enjoyment to get voted in, and we'll come for you. And I got a lot of applause. Anyways, the reason I bring it up was there was a guy that I was running against, a very impressive guy. He was a pediatrician, a career doctor, was a good, he was competent in speaking. He came up to me afterwards and said, "Can you teach me to speak like you?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Well, what's some advice?" I was like, the best advice I could give anyone for any kind of speaking is be authentic. Be yourself. Because if you're trying to be disingenuous or if you're trying to sound like someone else, you might fool people for a while, but inevitably you're going to be shown as hollow. So I always respect those sorts of people, even people I disagree with. I respect the people that I think are genuine more because you can actually have a conversation. So many people that I interact with, and I'm biased, but so many people I interact with on the left, I just feel are disingenuous. It's just like whatever it takes for my team to win. And I don't have the time of day for that anymore because, what's the utility of being able to have a discussion with that?
Right, and it seems like there's a lot of people, and as a matter of fact, it's on the right too. I had a person on Twitter tell me we were having they were going after a 5 to 10 second clip that was taken out of context and posted on Twitter, essentially saying that the United States politically has never been involved with Ukraine. And that's not what we were talking about. We were talking about the United States military and how the United States military has not gotten involved in any combat in that area of the world, in that geopolitical area. And so when it comes down to it, they're disingenuous. Basically, being disingenuous is the hallmark of a debate. And I'm like, no, it's not the hallmark of a debate. A debate is two people believing what they're saying, trying to find facts that back what they're saying, and basically arguing those facts out, typically in front of an audience. And so I think that there's been a lot of people that have come on the Twitch poll that have been disingenuous, that have come in and basically saying, "I'm going to say whatever I need to say to win, even if I know I'm wrong when I say it, I'm gonna say it confidently, and I'm going to be wrong when I'm confident." And I view that as just despicable. At a certain point, it's like, okay, so there's no point in talking to you because there's nothing that I can say, there's nothing that I can show you, there's literally nothing in the world that can happen that would make you say, yeah, you're right, I'm not quite sure about this anymore. And it happens on the left and the right. And I've only gotten to see that because like I said, I've gone further to the middle, and some of the people on the right have decided that I'm now a lefty, and now they put their targets on me. So I've seen it on the right as well.
Maybe we'll get to some areas that we disagree. I think that most of the bad behavior I talk about is overwhelmingly more on the left, but certainly it could happen on the right as well. But one of the things that you mentioned here on that specifically, I think a lot of people, don't understand when you get into sort of streaming or something like this or putting yourself out there. If you have any level of intelligence, sometimes you could read an audience quite clearly. So, for example, if I'm going on to debate Destiny and I'm going to have 60 people watching and he's going to have 5,000 people watching, I know what his audience likes, what the vast majority of them like, right? So I could, if I chose to be disingenuous and try to get them to like me. And I could say, oh, I'm going to say some things I don't really believe because I want them to say, maybe I'll get some more subs. If I say, yeah, okay, technically I'm a conservative, but I'm one of the good ones and I agree with you on this, this, and this. And it's difficult. It takes some sort of strength of character to walk into an environment like that, knowing that the majority of people aren't going to like what you have to say. And, that could go both ways. I debate a lot on the Crucible. The Crucible is basically ran by people that are Christian nationalists. Over and over, they have me on to debate against Christian nationalism, to debate for gay marriage. I know that that's what their audience doesn't want to hear. I know that that infuriates them, but I don't know what I could be other than authentic. And I was wondering, do you run into that situation where it's like, okay, I know I'm going on a space that's predominantly right-wingers, I'm going to say some stuff they don't like, but I have to say it because if I'm not being genuine, what good am
I? Yeah, that's happened to me before. As a matter of fact, when I came back from my people get pissed when I call it deployment. I'm gonna call it deployment anyways because that's what it was. My deployment to Wisconsin for the Afghan refugees. When I came back from that, there was a lot of people that still considered me to be like the same person I was 6 months ago. And my positions have grown since then, quite significantly. When I took myself out of politics, I understood like not towing the party line, et cetera, and so on. That's kind of when I got that thought process is, and I'm not going to toe any party line. And so when I started going back on panels, people were having me like be the right winger on a panel, and there were some topics where I was just going against the people that I was supposed to be teamed up with on the debate, and it shocked quite a few moderators. But I came back to be genuine. They didn't ask me my thoughts prior to inviting me onto the debate. I knew they wanted me to be like the righty, the Republican, the toe the party line kind of guy. But that's just not what I was gonna do. And I decided to be genuine instead, and it shocked a lot of people. And now I think it's kind of hard for moderators to do that with someone who is genuine, right? Because unless you ask what their position is beforehand, you're going to end up with like assuming this is their position unless you've heard it before. And then you know what happens when you assume, and you're not always right.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting as someone who was putting together panel shows yourself and being a moderator. Like, I think that's something that I wanted to talk to you about that I think would be one of the more difficult things in doing that. As someone who's basically not hosted a panel, but merely participated in them, one of the things that I oftentimes found frustrating is they'll set it up 4 righties versus 4 lefties, or 3 righties versus 3 lefties. But the 2 righties that they would give me were basically centrists that were like, on these specific topics, I'm not a right winger. And so it ends up being like me versus 7 people. Now, it's still better than being genuine than pretending to side with me just for the sake. So I'm not discrediting you doing that. But my question to you is, are you cognizant of those things when you're setting up a panel, when you're being a moderator, that like, we have to try to balance it out somewhat, because if we just have 7 people on one side of this issue and 1 on the other, it kind of gives a perception of imbalance.
Typically I'll go back and look at what people's views are on their channel that they've espoused on these specific topics prior. And so I'll look back and see like what their views are there. And typically I'll decide my panel by that. It has been proven to fail. It has been proven that some people no longer maintain the same idea that they espoused before. But that has been the most consistent way I've figured out how to do it. Versus just taking 3 people who align themselves with the conservatives and 3 people who align themselves with the liberals, and then smashing them together, expecting them to just toe party lines. And so, especially since I don't do that, it's hard for me to expect someone else to do it. And so as a panel host, that is one of the difficulties. That is one of the hardest parts of putting together a panel, is getting the right people on the right panel. And to make that entertaining. And the first panel I did, Rob, you were on it, and you gave me one hell of a job as a fucking moderator, man. The cage match definitely helped. But no, it was a fun
It's still
experience.
one of my favorite clips. That was with am I wrong that was what's her name? Stardust. I love that clip. I actually clipped that into its own YouTube little YouTube short. Her putting things in her mouth, good stuff. But yeah, it's a thankless job. I guest moderated a debate one time, and it was, I forget what the channel was for, like Politics Discord or something, and it was 2-on-2, and it had to do with sort of the FBI and whether or not it should be disbanded, and it was definitely 2 lefties and 2 righties, and the righties obviously were talking about corruption at the FBI, and the lefties were like, yeah, we agree, And so now as a moderator, I'm put in this position like this is going to be the most boring 2-hour debate ever. So I got to steer this in a direction where I could get some sort of disagreement. Have you found yourself having to do that where it's like, okay, this was unexpected, but as a moderator, I have to get something, for this to be a productive conversation? It doesn't really help to have 8 people sitting here going, yep, we all agree.
Right. That was an issue. I'm not gonna lie, that was an issue. And typically when they would all agree, I would choose. I would go more to the extremes, right? So I would like go to. I'm gonna push this a little bit more extreme. And then I'm gonna kind of like let that sit there. But my style as a moderator is I was not a debater. I wasn't going to step in and debate the topics. I invited people on to debate the topics. It's not my job to debate the topics. It's my job to moderate the discussion and to make sure that it's going in a direction. And I think that when you put together a panel of people and they all agree on a specific topic, you have either one, not done your homework, or two, it was just unfortunate circumstances. But underneath the unfortunate circumstances, I believe that you can push it to a little bit further extreme, and you'll start to see more of a disagreement. And so that's what I found worked for me, because I did my homework and I understood that these people did have disagreements on this. So I just push I understand that you guys all agree on this, but let's move the line a little bit further this way. And now what's your positions? And so that would spark some discussions, and typically enough to fill the topic, the timetable that I had for the topic.
Yeah. And again, I say this all the time. It's a thing. I have no interest in hosting panels. I don't really want to host debates anyways, especially panels though. And I've kind of cut back on doing the panels because some of the aforementioned things of the trouble it brings into your real life. In addition to, sometimes it's very difficult all it takes is one bad apple sometimes to kind of put a panel off the rails. Sometimes maybe I'm that bad apple. That's okay. So I've been trying to focus more on one-on-one or two-on-two debates, but I was interested to get your perspective on that. Just real quick, we'll jump into some different topics here. That is something that you're thinking of bringing back, though? And can you tell people sort of how they could follow you when you bring that back, and when you might be bringing that back?
Yeah, so I'll probably be bringing that back. I would say early spring next year is when I plan to bring that back. And when I bring that back, I'm not quite sure what day it'll be on, because people on Twitch change what days they do panels all the time. So I'm not ready to commit to a day yet. But when I do bring that back, you can find it on twitch.tv/thesprouticus. And I will also be uploading to YouTube. My YouTube channel has like one video on it, I believe, maybe 2. So if you want to go subscribe, feel free. Feel free. It's Sprouticus on YouTube. Might be a little bit harder to find because I only have 2 videos. So I might have to scroll a little bit. So I do apologize about that. But I will be editing these debates, and they will be going on YouTube as well. So just be on the lookout early spring. And you might even see robnoerr make an appearance. Who knows?
I would do one at least. I'll do one at least. But so getting into some specific political topics. First, I just want to ask you: is there anything that you're itching to talk about? That you've felt deeply about that maybe you haven't had a chance to talk about lately, or do you want me to just start a riff on some topics and what you think about them?
I think I've got a different view of the 2024 election than a lot of people do.
Let's hear it. I think it'd be interesting.
So I think that Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump are going to be the 2 frontrunners for the Republican in the primary. I think Ron DeSantis will beat out Donald Trump and will receive the Republican nomination. And then I think Donald Trump will either continue to run as a Republican and not concede and try to run as a Republican and we end up with 2 Republican candidates, one that is obviously the nominee and one that's not. Or Trump runs as an independent. But I see 3 presidential candidates going into 2024, the Republican nominee, Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, and the Democratic nominee. And so when that happens, if Biden is the Democratic nominee, so if it's DeSantis, Trump, Biden, I see 0 of them getting 270 electoral votes. I see the House of Representatives voting for the president, and I see the Senate voting for the vice president. So I think in 2024, it is a very realistic probability that you end up with President Ron DeSantis and Vice President Joe Biden. I think that's a very real possibility, considering that the House election just happened and the House decides the president. So I think that's a very real possibility, and I think that would be one hell of a ride for political talk
It would,
shows and
that would,
everybody
yeah,
else.
it definitely that. I mean, I think that you're on to something. I don't know that it'll come to that, but it's interesting. It's certainly a possibility. I think that from a Republican perspective, when I'm looking at 2024, there's a lot of dire warnings for the Republicans, and that's not just looking at the 2022 election and saying that, and that's looking at internal fighting, because I think there are a lot of Trump voters that won't vote for a different Republican. And I think there are a lot of establishment Republican voters that won't vote for Trump, and a lot of people in a general election that won't vote for Trump. So imagine that you're just a Republican or bust person and you're like, I don't give a shit if it's DeSantis or if it's Trump, whoever. I don't care. I just want Republicans to win. What would your choice be if it's between Trump and DeSantis? If you choose Trump, you're like, well, we can't win the general, because we don't think there's enough votes out there to win the general. But if you choose DeSantis, then you're going to say, well, there's a lot of the base that's just not going to vote for him because they're going to write in Trump, or Trump will run as an independent. And also, I should mention, there's a lot of establishment Republican people that won't vote for Trump. So it's the bifurcation of sort of the Republican Party lends to, like, I see that occurring. I don't know that it'll get to the level you're talking about, but I'll admit this, there's a better chance of that happening than in my lifetime. I mean, that's certainly true. And, the Republicans will have the House, so that's how it would shake out if it went to that.
It's only happened once. It's only happened one time. The only time it's happened was John Quincy Adams. When he won presidency, none of the presidential candidates won 270 electoral votes. It would be interesting. It would be very interesting to see no one get 270 electoral votes, and just the drama that would ensue from that. But I've heard people say that Ron DeSantis isn't going to run. Ron DeSantis is going to lay back and let Donald Trump run. And I think the people that think that are just inherently wrong. I don't think Ron DeSantis is going to let Trump decide what he's going to do. I think that's been made evidently clear through what's been happening recently. I don't think, especially with the attacks that came from Trump towards DeSantis after he won governor of Florida again, I just don't see it happening. I see Ron DeSantis putting up a fight. I see him campaigning against Trump in 2024 for the primary. I don't see Trump being the only nominee, or the only realistic nominee the only realistic candidate we have for nominee for the Republicans. I don't see it. I think that Ron DeSantis is going to throw his hat in. I think there's going to be a couple other big names that throw their hat in, but it's eventually going to come down to DeSantis versus Trump.
If you could, I haven't had a chance to ask someone this. I sort of have my own opinions on this, which you'll probably be able to tell what they are. But there's this argument from, I considered myself a Trump supporter. I volunteered for his campaign. I supported him. I'm leaning towards DeSantis over Trump, but I could see positives and negatives of both of them. But there's a lot of Trump supporters that are out there saying well, DeSantis should wait. Trump 2024, DeSantis 2028. Do you have anything to say about the sort of concept of striking while the iron's hot? Whereas if you have political clout in a moment, right, it might not be prudent to say, I'll wait 4 years, because how do you know where you'll be in 4 years? You could have a heart attack, you could have a stroke like Fetterman, or maybe you do something that lowers your likability or your winnability. So what do you say to those people that are saying, well, DeSantis should wait his turn?
No, strike while the iron's hot. Mike Pence did that. Indiana hated Mike Pence as governor. We hated Mike Pence. The best part of Mike Pence being vice president was he was no longer the governor of Indiana. No, he struck when the iron was hot, and he got elected as vice president. If you with this political climate the way it is today, you can't afford to wait 4 years. If you're hot right now and you have the political backing to run for president, then by all means run. Because if you wait 4 years, the environment can be so different. People could look at you so differently. For example, during COVID, there was a lot of people that thought Ron DeSantis was crazy, that Ron DeSantis was an awful governor. And there's still some people that think that, but overall people are looking at the numbers and like, okay, well, Ron DeSantis obviously did something right. So when it comes down to it, for what was COVID, 1.5 years, 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
that's half of what the people who are voting saying that Trump should run, DeSantis should wait. That's half the amount of years that you're looking at, and there's already been a giant shift in the way DeSantis is being looked at from then to now. So no, I would say strike while the iron's hot and get ready for it.
Yeah, and it's easy for us as people that aren't personal lives aren't personally there, to make proclamations. This would be best in my mind. But you have to understand is people might think this sounds selfish, but these are human beings, right? And they want power and they want clout, right? Obviously Trump does, which people say is a negative, but let's be honest. Like that's how Trump became president in the first place, because he's brash, he's arrogant, he's bold, he cares about his personal clout. And so you need some of that to become a politician at the highest level. So I just think it's unreasonable, to look at someone like DeSantis. You could take lessons from prominent politicians we've seen. At one point, Chris Christie's stock was very high. Now look at him. This happens all the time. And so I think that we just have to understand that it's not some board game where it's like, well, this is how I would play the game. They're human beings and they're going to make decisions that you might consider greedy, but really it's no more greedy than any situation. If you were up for that big promotion at work, would you say, it's only fair to leave Tom take that promotion? I'll wait 2 years. Like, no, if you could get the promotion, you're going to take it. That's what 90% of people would do. So
not only that, I think but it takes some clout chasing to become a streamer. You have to have some kind of like strive for clout to be a streamer. If you don't have some kind of strive for clout, you're going to epically fail. And so with that, like, it takes a certain percentage of that, not as much as it does to become president, but it takes a certain percentage of that to be a streamer. And there are certainly parts of streaming that takes less clout chasing, and such as people that like do political commentary, don't ever have anybody on. It's just you, and you're just working with yourself, and you're not really discussing drama between other people, and you're just literally going over the news. And so I think that's a lot less clout chasing than you would see an average streamer. But it does take a certain level of clout of like clout chasing to put yourself in front of everybody to say, hey, I think I could succeed in this area. I think I could debate these people better than the people that are doing it right now. And it does take a certain level of that to a certain level of confidence and a certain level of, I would almost say, arrogance to say like, yeah, I'm going to become a streamer because I can do this better.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I always thought this when I was like a young kid, and you'd see these commercials, it would be like, Joe's Pizza, best pizza in town. And you were like, really? Where was when there was some sort of meeting I was unaware of, there was a vote, And it's like, I always thought it'd be funny if someone was like, hey, Tim's Pizza, we're third best. We're okay. Maybe those other two places are busy. Give us a try, Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of confidence, and there's a fine line, right? I'll give you an example. Let's see what you think about this. Let's say that you are going to have me on as a guest on your stream, right? And you're like, yep, we're booked Friday at 9:00. And maybe you're like, I have some really great questions to ask Rob, or a big debate that I want to have for Rob. I'm very excited about it. But then an hour before I come on, right, like Donald Trump's people reach out to you and like, yeah, I would like to do your stream tonight, but I can only do it tonight. Like, there is a certain amount of you that's reaching for clout that's going to be like, holy shit, this is sort of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm going to pleasantly reach out to Rob and be like, Rob, I hope you understand. Like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And that's some measure of clout, because you're thinking, this will get more eyeballs on it. This is someone who has more political power and more political influence. So me getting my opinions out there while talking to him, I don't think that makes you a bad person, but it's a fine line. You can't constantly shit on people because it's like, oh, if I could get someone with 5 more viewers than you, that'll help me more. So screw this person.
I tell you what, Rob. I tell you what, Rob, early spring, when I invite you onto my panel, then if Donald Trump's people reach out to me and say that Donald Trump wants to be on the panel instead, and that evidently Donald Trump doesn't like you very much, so he wants you off the panel. I'm gonna send you a text and be like, hey, listen, Donald Trump doesn't want you on the panel. He's gonna be on the panel. Hope you can watch. I'll invite you next time. Like,
yeah, and you would understand, right? Like,
yeah.
I was.
If I got kicked off a panel for Donald Trump, I'd be like, I totally get it. Let the man.
Even
on.
if it was someone that you absolutely despise, like, if it's like, oh, Ilhan Omar's coming. I don't like Ilhan Omar, but I'd be like, totally get it. When I did a 24-hour stream the day before the 2022 midterms, and in Pennsylvania, in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, Trump was at a rally for Dr. Oz and for Doug Mastriano, and I had people calling in from the rally. County commissioners were calling in, and there was a chance that the candidates for Senate and Governor, Mastriano and Oz, were going to call in, and even an outside chance that Trump might come on for a couple minutes. And I was scheduled to be interviewing Dylan Burns at the time, and I was like, Dylan, just so you know, if Trump's on the other line, I'm going to have to let you go for a minute. And I know you don't like Trump, but he's like, of course, like, everyone understands that. But there is a certain level of sort of, I don't know what you would call it, sort of like gatekeeping, where it's like people make decisions on who to interact with purely based on how big their audience is. And I always try to remind myself, I'm human. Obviously, if I get the opportunity to bring in a really big person or to interact, I'm looking forward to doing Sitch and Adams' show. I'd love to get on Tim Pool's show. I love doing John Burke's show. They're bigger audiences. I like that. I'm human, right? But I also want to remind myself, never be the type of person that's like, I refuse to talk to someone because they don't have an audience. So I'm always trying to bring on guests that's like, I don't even have a stream. I'm just some random person that saw you on Twitter and I would like to talk with you. And I think that people understand that there's a fine line that you could run with it.
I tell you what, I've been striving to get on John Burke's show for a long time, but it's been fun. But no, there's a fine line. Typically for me, when I did my panels, it came down to who would make the panel more entertaining. And if this person would make the panel more entertaining, but doesn't necessarily have the viewership, I'm gonna choose them over the person that has the viewership, right? Because even if the viewers are watching and it's a sucky panel, like, that just makes me look worse. And so I'm going to choose whoever's going to make the panel more entertaining and hope that the quality is going to take over instead of the big names coming in. Of course, if the big names come in and it's like, yes, you would make this panel entertaining, just maybe a little less than the person I have, but not like noticeably, then you're probably going to get the spot. But if it's like a big name and it's like, I really don't think you're going to talk much, I really don't think you're going to say much, and you're not really going to add a whole lot to it, then it's like, the panel's full, but how about I add you on next week and try and choose topics that would make the panel more interesting to have them on it.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fair. But it is something that there's only one time that I could think of where I had to contact someone and say, I know I was supposed to stream with you this weekend, but I got an offer to do this bigger thing. Can I do it 2 hours before that, 2 hours later? And that person was very cool. It ended up working out, but you don't want to burn bridges, and you don't want to, this is true if you're out there and you're not a streamer. This is true in every walk of life. Walking that fine line between confidence and humility, right? Understanding that, like, you have to be confident in what you're doing, but you don't want to get arrogant. You don't want to think that you're too big for your britches, or you'll be exposed, and so it is tough, and particularly as much as me just doing my own show, I deal with that. I think you dealing with a panel, because you're dealing with 8 to 9 personalities per episode. So you could, in 1 month, if you do 4 panels, that's potentially like 36 different personalities. And, you don't know the interpersonal relationships. Maybe person A on the panel hates person C, and you didn't know it. And all of a sudden, this personal baggage is brought into for me, it was always more of a headache. I was like, there's no way in hell. I considered doing it when all the other panel shows fell off. I considered doing 1 or 2, and then I started to see the work it would be, and I was like, I'm good. I'm good on that. So
I'll tell you what, I did not expect the drama between you and Stardust. I didn't know where that came from, and I'm like, what?
It's all her. It was all her fault.
Cage match. All right, cool. We'll take care of this in the cage match. And you know what? It was a great way to introduce it. But it was. Yeah, it was definitely something I didn't see coming. But that's happened more times than that. Like I've had people on and like 10 minutes before the show, I'll be talking to like Queen Alexa or something like that. And she'd be like, "Oh, who do you have on today?" I'd be like, "Oh, this person, this person, this person, this person." Like, "Oh, you really want to stir the drama, don't you?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "These two people absolutely hate each other, and they've not been on panels together. And yeah, this is gonna be interesting." I'm like, "Well, uh, too late now.
Right.
Hope they listen to the moderator. Here we go."
Yeah, it is. You know, the thing with me and Stardust, like, obviously you're getting my biased opinion on it. I think that when I go back and watch it, I think that she's being edgy to be edgy's sake, and I think that fits in with sort of her brand, which is fine. I don't think that's disingenuous. I think that's who Stardust is. You know, because the thing that pissed me off was she was basically claiming that I was sort of forcing my opinions on her in a way similar to a man may force himself sexually on someone. And that seemed to be what she was implying. And, I was just like, okay, if that's what we're going to do, then I'll roll with that. One of the things for me, again, this is a fine line. Sometimes I get frustrated on those panels because you end up with people that it's like, you really don't have anything to add to this conversation. You're sort of talking out your ass. And, it's okay to be like on a specific topic, like, I don't know much about this. And sometimes you'll get in these topics and all of a sudden someone's talking, or I'll tell you, let me steer it in another direction so I could ask you a question. To me, as a panelist, and I wonder what you think is when you were a panelist or when you're a moderator, one of the things that pisses me off more than anything is if you see this. Say that you're talking, like, I finish my point, I'm like, what about this, Sprouticus, blah, 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 blah. And you're about to answer, and then I do this. And I'm talking to my audience, and I'm not even listening to you. I just talked to you, and now you're responding, and here I am talking to my audience, right? And now not only am I talking to the audience and not listening to you, but then the audience that person's audience doesn't get to hear. And that, to me, it's just like, it's one of the most disrespectful, time-wasting things. And then 90% of people that do this, right? Like 3 minutes later, they'll be like, wait, what about this? And it's like, yeah, we were just talking about that. And you chose not to listen. You chose to mute the panel and go ahead and talk to your audience. For me, I get so pissed off when the panel's watching that. It's like, I sit there and listen to people that I think have some of the most dog shit brain dead takes, but I patiently listen because I'm like, well, I'm going to rebut this. And it becomes frustrating to me when people join it and it's just like, I'm just going to talk when I want. And to me, it's just a speech that they're giving and they're not a good panelist because they're not interacting.
Right. So as a panelist, I've done this a couple times. I'm not gonna lie, I've done this a couple times. It's typically when like the argument has become so repetitive, that or when I'm being cut off before I can make my point. That I'll make my point in front of my audience, and if they want to talk over me or cut me off when I'm trying to make my point, that's fine. I'll still make my point for my audience and whoever watches my VOD afterwards. But that's not necessarily what you're talking about, and I understand that as well. And so no, I've seen that plenty of times. Typically, it's people that just are on the panel to be on the panel. And they're like, yeah, I'll join the panel, and then they're just there to be there. You know what I mean? They're just there so that way their name is on that list of people that were there. I've definitely seen it a couple times. As a moderator, it really depends. So as a moderator, if someone's doing that, it doesn't necessarily get on my nerves. I'm not the one debating. But if that's all it is, if it becomes like that's all it is, and that they're not adding anything that's like contributing to the conversation, it does become annoying. But if someone else on their side is like pushing the conversation forward and moving the conversation, that's fine. But if they're the one mainly arguing and they're not listening to their opponent when they're responding, typically that is when I'll call a cage match, and all the rules go out the window, and I'll let you two yell at each other for a while, and then I'll mute both of you, and then that forces everyone else who wasn't participating to start participating or sit in an awkward silence, which typically turns into start participating. I've had like an awkward silence for maybe like 10 to 15 seconds after a cage match, and they figured out like, oh, no one else is going to talk. I better start. So it's worked out, and I think that's one of the beauties of the cage match is that you can settle that kind of like annoyance and then kind of mute both those people and then force everyone else to start talking about it. Then when those two people come back, they kind of have to wait until they can jump in and talk about it more. And it typically moves it away from that instead of just letting that take over.
Yeah, I mean, my problem with it was just that she talked over me the whole time. So it's like it made it worthless. But I think that you're on to something. What makes that idea most interesting is the muting of both people afterwards, not as sort of a punishment to them, but sort of the idea is like, let's bury the hatchet on this point and then give other people a chance. Because oftentimes what you'll see is two people will start to, sometimes it's off the rails and they're not even talking about the topic. It's just they're sniping back and forth at each other, and that becomes the next hour. So I think when you're suggesting like this cage match and then mute people, it does lend to, okay, we're moving on from this. We're gonna give you the opportunity to hash this out, and then we're moving on. We'll take audience questions here if you don't mind in about 20 minutes. A couple That's fun. Specific topics that I wanted to get your take on. We could go through them rapid fire, or if you have a lot to say on one, we'll just stick on it. What do you think about the Elon Musk buying Twitter and releasing these Twitter files? As someone that sort of values people disagreeing and people speaking from multiple perspectives, do you see this as a big deal that potentially Twitter was intentionally censoring people of a political bent, or that the FBI may have been involved? Or do you think this is all to do about nothing?
I actually love it. I love it. I love that the facts are coming out. I've said multiple times that Twitter was interfering in the election by trying to censor the Hunter Biden story with the laptop. And they made sure that like it couldn't be shared, it couldn't be commented on, it couldn't be liked. It was literally just there as a stagnant post for the New York Post. And so I've called that interference on the election multiple times. And now Twitter's literally come out, and Elon Musk has forced the people that were responsible for it to come out and say like, yeah, I guess that kind of was interfering in the election. And so I'm honestly loving the fact that they're becoming more they're becoming more I can't think of the word I see through. That's not the correct word that I'm looking for. Yeah, becoming more transparent, and that's honestly what I love. Is I want transparency. If you're gonna ban someone, I want to know why they were banned. And Twitch is terrible at this. If someone's banned, I want to know why. If someone's censored, I want to know why. You have to prove to me that your platform is the best platform to be on, and that I'm going to have my space to talk, and that people aren't just being censored, or people aren't just being banned because you don't like what they said and it didn't actually go against any TOS. And so I love the transparency for Twitter, and people keep saying Twitter's going to go downhill. It's going to disappear because of Elon Musk. I don't think so. I think it's the whole, I'm going to move to Canada if Trump wins. And very, 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 very few, maybe like 0.001% of people that said that actually moved to Canada. And that's the same way I see this happening. People are going to stay on Twitter, and eventually it's going to become just the norm that Elon Musk is the owner of Twitter, and most of this will be forgotten about, but not the transparency. The transparency will still be there.
Yeah, I hope you're right. And I think that that's sort of where I'm thinking it's going as well. You know, when you're talking about when someone gets banned, you want to know why. What's even more frustrating than that's when you yourself gets banned and they don't tell you why. I've had that happen many times. I lost my Discord channel after one of the panels I did because one of the topics had to do with trans issues. And this is what was crazy about this situation. If I lose my Discord channel, oh well. But they also threatened to remove everyone who's my moderators. And some of the people that were my moderators, maybe some of the audience won't know some of these people, but you will. People like Danabo. Now, Danabo doesn't share my ideology or my political beliefs, but he's about to get banned, his account on Discord, because of my Discord channel. And so when Discord sent me the reason they were doing this, they just said that there were posts on my Discords attacking a marginalized group. And the best I could come up with is, someone misgendered someone. I scrolled back for months and could not find the post. So what's my option at that point? If I don't want all my friends that are moderators to get their accounts banned, I had no choice but to nuke my own site. That was all I could do. And it's frustrating because it's like, listen, I might not agree with their decisions on how they enforce TOS, but at least if you tell me this is specifically what was done, then I could take steps to make sure it wasn't done before. But Discord and YouTube and other places like that, they just say, somewhere in your 4-hour stream, you said something that's not appropriate. And it's like, what? We're not going to tell you. You're just banned. And it's like, It's almost like, would you not say that the lack of transparency is further proof that they're engaged in a double standard because they want certain perspectives to be removed? And if they know, if we said this is exactly what you could say and exactly what you can't say, then that makes it less likely for them to be able to boot these people off.
I would say if it's not proof, that it's definitely lending to the idea. It's definitely giving off that perception. And so if it's not proof, then evidently they want the perception of that. And so I highly doubt they want the perception that they are being unequal with the implementation of TOS. But I think that they are unequal with the implementation of TOS. I think that Section 230 needs to be revised to ensure that they can't be unequal with the implementation of TOS. If it's found that they are being unequal, they lose their tax benefits and they lose the benefits they generally have underneath Section 230, which is very important to YouTube or Twitch or Twitter because it ensures they don't get sued for what the people on their platform say. So I think that if it got revised to where you had to implement TOS basically without bias, or lose Section 230 or lose the benefits of Section 230, then you would see you would see these platforms come out and just like start being as transparent as possible. This is why this person was banned, and like lay out a full explanation before they ban somebody. And so I that's mainly why I think Section 230 needs to be revised, and I think that would settle that issue quite a lot. But I know that like they're not wanting Section 230 revised, and I think we both know why they don't want Section 230 revised is because they can just quietly mute people that they don't like and get away with it, which honestly to me is disgusting, especially when like someone tries to start up another one, like Parlor, which was gaining a lot of traction, and then Amazon just decides, oh yeah, you can't use our servers. So it's just insane. It's just insane.
I mean, one of the things I say a lot is when you have to rely on those types of censorship, it's an implicit admission that your ideas aren't that good. Like, I don't have to rely on that sort of censorship because I'm confident in my ideas. I might be wrong from time to time, but I think that you see more and more a push against free speech, the First Amendment. And to me, it's an admission of like an authoritarian impulse that says, either we can't defend our ideas or sell them to the majority of people, or we just think we're better than you. So shut up, plebe, and listen to what we decide for you.
Right, and it's getting insane. I think that there needs to be something done because the internet has outgrown many of the laws that we have today, and so there needs to be something done because the laws don't equally match what we have in technology. And so laws need to be changed. We need to figure something out because obviously this isn't working. And it seems that politicians are just okay with the status quo, which is a little bit disturbing to me. So
yeah, I totally agree. As someone who's in the military at some level, I wanted to ask you about what did you think. And I have no idea what your take is because I haven't talked to you for a while on a lot of these issues. But what did you think about the many service members that were discharged for not taking the vaccine and sort of the push to reinstate those members?
As a veteran of the armed forces, I think that especially like you're talking special forces, people in special forces have kicked out for not getting the vaccination. There are people in like these high up places that were kicked out for not taking the vaccination. I think that when it comes down to it, that enforcing that vaccination, which was wrong, but at the same time, I think that you would need to come up with a valid explanation as to why you're not taking the vaccination. And so if you were able to provide that valid explanation, then it should have been accepted, which I'm sure people in special forces had a valid explanation for not taking them, or they just lose their job. Like I'm sure people who were willing to put their job on the line to not take the vaccination had an explanation of some sort. And again, this isn't public knowledge. We don't get to see like what they tried to explain as to why they weren't taking the vaccine. We don't get to see any of this. It's not public knowledge. And so it's hard to say. But given that you had a valid explanation, I think that it's completely incorrect that the military kicked you out for not taking the vaccination. And then to add on to that, I think that the government should then accept you back into the military and enforce back pay.
Yeah, I think that I don't know. This is just a guess on my part. I would guess that the valid explanation that many of them had was, I think that it's dangerous. I don't want to put it in my body because I think that it'll cause more harm to me. And we might disagree on this, but my take on this is, for young, healthy people, particularly those like if you're serving in the armed forces, particularly like if you're talking special forces, you're probably very physically fit and you're probably amongst the people least likely to have a significant case of COVID because you're so healthy and you're young enough to be in sort of fighting shape. I think that, we shouldn't have been forcing this sort of, new vaccine on these people. But instead of having this debate, let me just ask you the hypothetical. What would happen if we find out that a lot of people in the armed services that were young and healthy, that actually, once we've now looked at the evidence, that even though the risks of harm from a vaccine were very, very, very small, they were still bigger than the risk of those people being hospitalized with COVID? What does that say about us as a country if we rushed in to the very people we asked to put their lives on the line and said, you can't make up your own mind or have questions about this, and then it turns out, oops, we were wrong?
That tells me that the military has become too political, and the military was built to be apolitical, and so the entire idea of the military is to be apolitical. And I think that what we're seeing, especially like in these certain situations and in other situations, is that the military is being politicized from the inside, which is dangerous. But it's being politicized from the inside, and that's a really hard part. Like, how do you unpoliticize something that's been politicized? Like for example, when I had a training. I think Biden announced a stand down for it, but it was about BLM and stuff like that. And they had asked everyone like, if you think that BLM is a terrorist group, like or is like a is yeah basically not terrorist group, domestic terrorism. Yeah, if you think they're a domestic terrorist group, raise your hand. And so like there was a couple people that raised their hands. They didn't get like reprimanded for raising their hands, but like at a certain point, it's like, what does this have to do with being in the military? Like I'm confused. Like what part of this makes us a more lethal group? Like the entire part of the military is to be a lethal force. What part of politics in our home country makes us less lethal? And so it was confusing to me because this seems to be far and beyond the intent of what the military is to be, and instead just enforcing whatever the politics are that they want to be enforced. And so I would argue that it would need to go back to be apolitical. And it doesn't matter your political beliefs. What matters is you're here and you're willing to fight for your country. And we're here to be a lethal force. We are here to be the strongest military in the world, and to prove that, and when we need to, and to make sure that we don't end up in this situation to where we're being forced to prove it or we're being challenged significantly. So I think that politicizing the military leads to a downfall of the military, because instead of working to be lethal, you're working towards a certain set of ideals.
Excellent. So we're talking to Sprouticus here. If you're cool with it, would you mind taking audience questions? If anyone in the audience has a question.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
So we'll open it up. We'll keep talking, but I'll be actively looking for audience questions. Please keep it respectful. Obviously, if the questions are bad faith or just designed to make me look bad, if it's questions, what do you think about Rob's fat face? I'd probably read that. But you all know what I'm talking about. So if you have any questions for Sprouticus out there, Aftershock asked first, were you always a right winger? I think I know the answer to that because you already said that you don't really consider yourself a right winger now. So what was sort of the maturation? You've already explained how you have shifted around politically here in the last 6 months, but sort of, when you were a younger person, when you're coming out of high school, where were your leanings politically and how have they changed?
So I'll answer the first question first. What do I think of Rob's big fat face?
Yeah,
I think he eats well. I
it's
think he
gonna be a
eats very
cold
well.
winter.
He's got some good food, and you know what? I think good food is always good. So, but to answer the actual question, I think I've always been a right winger. Ever since like I was in high school. I was in high school, and one of my teachers was like talking to my dad, and he's like, he's like, you talk politics at home with your son. And dad's like, no. And he's like, you don't have to lie to me. I have him in class. It's obvious that you talk politics. And my dad's like, we don't. And like, because I was very political when I was in high school. As a matter of fact, when I was in intermediate school, we had a mock election, and I was I was the head of the Republican Party for the mock election that we had in the intermediate school. So like I've been political from pretty early on. And just I think part of the idea of what happened is that I surrounded myself with a bunch of other people who are like-minded, and never reached out to people that I disagree with to talk about stuff until like I started doing Twitch, and until I took the break. And then all of a sudden, like I'm talking to people who I disagree with, and they're bringing up good points. So like, oh, I've never really thought about that. And so it comes down to a point to where unless you're exposed to the other side, unless you talk about these disagreements with the other side, then you're going to be bound in this echo chamber to where it doesn't matter what you say, you're right, because everyone else believes the same stuff. It's a very dangerous place to be, because you don't actually get your thoughts tested. They're not tried and true. They're just what the hive mind thinks.
Yeah, and I always say, to me, that's no. I understand there are always exceptions to the rules, and that certainly could happen in a right wing space, particularly if you grew up in a town that where people tended to be more right wing. But when people talk about privilege, it's one of the things I talk about all the time. I was privileged to be a right winger. I wasn't political in high school. I was a drunk. You know, I was worried about playing football, wrestling. I was in like, I was class clown. I was voted. So but once I got into college, I was more of a drunk. But I started to become political after sort of the Iraq War. But I did debate. I did policy debate, and that is the most radical left wing people you could imagine. And so every political position that I had was constantly challenged, and not by idiots. Some of these people were better debaters than me. Some of them had perfect SAT scores, and so that was actually a privilege, because to go out there and talk to people that are very intelligent, that are challenging your perspective, it makes you either change your perspective or learn how to defend and embrace your perspective more. So I think you're absolutely right that you know, it's again, it's another thing where you don't want to go overboard. You know, you don't want to get into this cult of personality where it's like, most people on Twitch are left wingers, so I'm left wing. But you also want to be seeking out good faith, competent people that could push back on what you think. And that's one of the reasons that I was drawn to debate. The next question, I'm going to reframe the question, but I will ask it as they've asked. It said, Tainted Holy says, what made you change from conservative to liberal? I will re-ask the question in this way. What are the positions you hold that you see conservative people saying, well, you're not really a conservative, you're a liberal? Can you give us some examples of what some of those positions might be?
So yeah, there's a couple positions that I hold that would be tantamount to that. So one position that I hold is my abortion position. I think abortion should be outlawed, given 5 exceptions. The exception of rape, mother's health, infant's health. If you are, I apologize.
That's all right. That was interesting.
If you mother's health, infant's health. If you are if the mother is underneath the age of 18 years old, their mother's incest and rape. Yeah, those are the 5. And so there's been people that have said that's pro-choice. And there's been people that have said nope, that's still pro-life. And there have been basically people on the right that have said that, like, I can't believe that you'd allow exceptions for this or allow exceptions for that. And in my mind, like, this is socially where it has to be until we end up with artificial wombs. And when we end up with artificial wombs, that we can talk about that then. But I think abortion should be outlawed basically in all cases once we have artificial wombs. But on the like there's been others such as that I believe that welfare should be tapered down instead of completely gone after you earn a certain amount of money. There, it's hard to think of all of them because honestly they're just genuine thoughts to me, so it's hard to like say like this is the one the lefties agree with.
The big one I get's gay marriage, right? That I support
toxic masculinity.
gay
I believe toxic masculinity exists. I support gay marriage. I support I support trans. I support trans rights. I think that they have the right to be who they want to be. Like I there's a lot of things that I support. That just some people on the right don't, and they go after me for it. But I necessarily wouldn't put them as like liberal ideas. They're just my genuine thoughts and being expressed.
It's something that I hear, because I debate people that are more right wing than me, and so I hear you're a fake Christian, you're a fake right winger, and things like that. I'll be the first to admit, like, this is the arrogance in me, or the confidence, we'll put it that way. Since I said arrogance is bad, maybe, but I'm the best you got. Right? Like, yeah, you might be right. There might be right-wing people out there that are more right-wing than me. I don't even consider myself right-wing first and foremost. I consider myself a populist. I feel that the issue most important to me is corruption, and I would align with people on the left to fight back that corruption until it's dealt with. And then, then I'll argue against the left. I'm not a socialist. I disagree with socialism, etc. So for me, the sort of disagreements that I have are less about some of the issues that you talked about that people say, well, you're a dirty left winger, or you're a dirty liberal. I would find more succor in someone who was the left winger that was pro gay marriage and was for abortions up until 8 weeks or 10 weeks or something like that, but also understood the corruption of the FBI and things like that, rather than a neocon, George Bush type person. That's how I feel. But to each their own. I do think it's, there are, I've made those criticisms of people, so I'm not saying that people in the audience are wrong. I've said, I think this person's full of shit. I'm on this panel with them and they say they're a right winger. Yeah, every time I'm on with them, they're just siding with the left, so I don't think they're a right winger. So I've been there, I've said that. But I also think that it could go too far, and sometimes there's these purity tests on issues, and people end up cutting off their nose despite their face. A good example of that, and we'll see what you think about this, is like Donald Trump. Like, Trump's right to attack certain groups. He's right to attack the media. He's right to attack sort of establishment type Republicans. But he goes after anyone that could be perceived as a threat. Like, he's out there like, DeSantis sucks, and like, he'll just go after everyone. And it's like, dude, at some point you can't fight the world. At some point you need some ally, right? So I think oftentimes you could go too far with these purity tests where it's like, it's my way or the highway, and you end up getting rid of some people that would have allied with you on important issues.
Right, and I think you see this in the left and the right. For example, Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party because of, I'm sure, because of purity tests. And so you see this on the left and the right. Joe Manchin has been given serious pressure. And honestly, I'm surprised Joe Manchin hasn't switched parties. So like the left and the right, you're going to see purity testing. You're going to see people leave the party because of purity testing. And it's unfortunate. It really is. But the funny part is that the people who leave from the opposite side and come over are welcomed with open arms. Whereas if someone said that they were a liberal and had these ideas, then all of a sudden they're not an actual liberal, and they need to be done away with. So like it just depends. If you're an ex-conservative, it's great. If you're a liberal, no, these are not good ideas. So yeah. It's
That's
just
a great
fine
point.
to see the duality.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. Yeah, people can't wait to pat Tulsi Gabbard on the back, right? But if you're a right winger who has a few left wing positions, or you maybe you support gay marriage, but you're fiscal conservative and everything, they'll shoot you down. But if Tulsi comes to the right, they're like, yeah, even though by any objective metric she's still far more left wing than you, but it's seen as like, yeah, you came to the good side. Galil Dowdy asks, do you read? And if so, what are the types of things you're into reading?
Oh my. Yes, I do read. Typically I read a lot of boring stuff. I was recommended a book that I'm currently getting ready to start reading. But it is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. But I also have read Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Dr. Josh McDowell. I've read Jordan B. Peterson's, I think it's 12 Rules to Life and 12 More Rules to Life. Typically, I read philosophy, religion, books such as those.
I rate my reading now that I have up here. I have The Permanent Coup against Trump. Then I have, this is a fan favorite, I have my copy of The Mueller Report that I like to go through when I'm doing debates. And then, of course, I had to pick up the Idris Elba Colorful Fantasies with the Sexiest Man Alive. Which it's got words, so that counts. One of the things I tell people, I always had these New Year's resolutions like, damn, I need to read more. I need to read more books. And I can tell you with a straight face, Sprouticus, that I probably read 50 to 60 books a month now, which is insane. Now, most of them are 4 pages long and they're cardboard because they're for my 1-year-old son, but that doesn't matter. The only thing people are interested in are how many books have you read? So I'm killing it. I feel that I've really increased my volume in the amount of books that I'm getting through. Aftershock asks, what do you think is the most important issue in society that we're facing now?
I feel like I'm gonna self promo here a little bit, but the most important issue in society that I see currently is honestly men's rights. Men have the vast share of suicides. They have the vast share of unlooked at mental health issues. They have the vast share of unreported rapes. They have the vast share of being in jail. They have the vast share. There's so much like not getting your kids after a divorce. And so I think that this has been something that's just gone under the wayside for too long, and it needs to be addressed. And so that's why I'm going to do a podcast that I'm working on setting up is called Man Up. And we're going to go over basically men's rights issues and like try to how to address this in society. And of course we'll have guests on. We'll talk about men's rights, but it will be interesting. But that's just one of the projects I'm working on right now. So I don't have necessarily a release date for that, but it is in the works.
By the way, Galil, who asked you about reading, said to tell you, he said, thanks. That's very interesting. Like, talk about that for a second here. One of the things that I think happens with these conversations it's very complicated. When you're talking about specific issues for specific groups, it comes off as sounding bigoted or racist or whatever if you decide to advocate for a specific group. So, for example, if white people decide we want to advocate for white people, people are like, well, that's racist. You can't do that. But if black people decide they want to, no one says that, right? And the truth is, objectively, neither of those are racist. I focus on a group as well. The group I focus on is sort of rural people. I feel that rural people, I don't care your sexuality, I don't care your gender, I don't care your ethnicity. I just am like the people that I see that live around here, which I'll be honest are predominantly white, but there are certainly people of all different affects of different nature. I feel like they don't have a voice. I feel like that businesses are leaving this area and that the communities are having more and more trouble. And I don't feel like anyone takes their problems seriously. That's what you're saying about men's rights as well. And one of the things that I talk about, and we'll see what you think, is it is true that there's male privilege. That's true. It's true that there's toxic masculinity. It's true that there's white privilege. But it's also true that there's female privilege. And there's also true that there is detriments to being a man. Like, life is complicated. Depending on the scenario you're in, the time you're in, the country you're in, and all of these other factors, it could be beneficial to be a man, or it could be detrimental to be a man. And I think that with the left that have played, I blame them, maybe you don't exclusively blame them, that played this identity politics games, it's always in this very simple story of one side's the oppressor and the other side's the oppressed. So when it comes to men and women, it's like, well, men are the oppressors, the patriarchy, we need feminism. And men have been thrown under the bus. One of the things you constantly hear, and it never made sense to me, is, well, 483 of the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are men. Right, and 80% of the homeless are men. Now, as me and you, are we more likely to be near the bottom or at those Fortune 500 CEOs? We're not going to make it there. So why would our issues as just regular people, why are they shoved under the rug like that we can't have actual issues with like custody or with suicide rates or with dangerous jobs or depression? We can't talk about that. So I think that you're absolutely onto something. Do you see that as something as well, that you acknowledge there is male privilege, but there are often, many times, where there's detriments to being a man that aren't covered?
Oh yeah, there's male privilege, for sure. I can go walk the street right now and not worry about someone coming up to me and thinking they can, like just tackle me or like try and like kidnap me or anything like that. I'm not scared of any of that. So like I can go walk the sidewalk. I can go for a jog, and it's currently, what time is it currently? It's currently 10:45 p.m. So it's definitely dark outside, and I don't feel like I need to carry a knife. I don't feel like I need to carry keys in my hands. And so that's definitely something that I consider to be privileged to be a male. But what I also would say is that the detriment of being a man is I encourage everyone to do this. Go ask your friends that are men. Go ask them who do you talk to when you're dealing with an issue that is just taking over your mental health. Who do you talk to? Who do you trust? Oftentimes they'll say nobody because nobody cares. And that's a real thing, is that men feel like no one cares. You can't talk to other men; they'll see you as weak. Like why are you showing your emotions? You're weak. And you can't talk to women because women don't care about men's emotions. As a matter of fact, women have by and large left men. This is per study. I don't have the exact study on me, so don't take my word for word here. Just look it up afterwards. But they've left men because they've shown too much emotion. And so you run that risk as a man to where it's like, okay, I can't show too much emotion, but I'm also dealing with a lot of stuff that I need to take care of. Who in the world do I talk to? And that's a real question that men have. And it comes down to it, and men would be like, I got to deal with it. And they don't talk to anybody about it, and they just let it fester, which does lead to suicide, does lead to depression, does lead to a lot of mental health issues, which, by the way, they won't get checked because they're much less likely. I think it's like 1 to 100 less likely to see a doctor in general. So basically, to see your doctor for a checkup, men are 1 in 100 less likely to do that than women. Let alone a psychologist or therapist to get your mental health checked out. So there's a lot of issues right there that is dealing with men, and it's a problem, and I just don't feel like it's being addressed correctly.
Yeah, and I think that there's sort of, not to get too deep in this could be an hours long conversation, right? But there's this sort of idea of gender roles or traditional roles of traditional masculinity and femininity, and what, as a society throughout history, we've expected men to do on average and women to do on average. And I think that we've thrown that out too quickly. I think that I absolutely support a system that says that the exceptions should absolutely allowed to exist. If you're in a relationship with a man and woman, and the woman is the primary breadwinner and the man's the stay-at-home parent, I don't think that's necessarily bad for your unique situation. But on the average, that's not the way that we're sort of built. There are biological differences, and there are skill sets that, on average, of course, there could be exceptions to every rule. What I see occurring is a lot of the problems that we see that you would talk about with men have always existed, even before, like, even if you go back to like the 1300s, the 1400s, like men being involved in more dangerous occupations. Yeah, no shit. Like that's, yep. Women were at home, so, but there was also these benefits, and it never is going to directly equal out. But there were things that we expected of men that was bad, but they also got privileges. Like they were, considered head of household. And then the opposite with women. Maybe they weren't as head of household, but they didn't do as much of these dangerous stuff. Go back and watch the movie Titanic. Why were the men not getting on the boats? Oh, right. Because as a society, it's an unwritten rule. Protect the women and children. You can't attack that, right? But if you're a fighting age man, fuck you, right? If we come into your town, you're done. We don't care. No one's mourning for you. That's just expected. You'll pick up arms and fight. That's the way it is, But
When
what
you
I
watch
see...
Titanic,
Go ahead.
sorry, when you
Go.
watch Titanic, though, I want you to realize there was enough room for both him and Rose on that
That's
plank,
right.
and she was a complete bitch for not saying jump on this plank with me. So
It didn't even cross her mind because of female privilege. Yeah, it didn't even cross her mind. Like, as a guy, you'd be like, oh shit, let me make room. But as a woman, it's like, it didn't even cross my mind. No, it's, so what I think's unique and what we're seeing now is absolutely, I don't begrudge women for saying, no, wait a minute, we should be allowed to do X, Y, and Z, and there is privilege of being, that's all good. But the problem is, like you said, we don't even have the possibility for men to say, well, let's advocate for our issues without these accusations of misogyny, the belittling of like, life's so hard for you. You're a man. Yeah, for a lot of men, it is really hard. And there is something to be said. And I'm not going to get too in the weeds here, but I think this oppression Olympics, or this sort of cultural Marxism that divides us based on, in this case, sex, but it could divide you on race and all these things. And we say one group's the oppressor. There's a lot of harm that comes with no one taking your group seriously. Everyone thinking your group's the villain. And, that's what I say. To me as a new father, my son's almost 2, the most harmful thing that could happen to me in my life would be me not having access to my child. And it's just accepted. If a man and woman divorces, there's an 85% chance that kid's going with the wife. I can't think of less privilege that could exist. For me, that would be the end-all be-all of my life. And yet we just all accept that's the system. And then on the other hand, we say though, but the woman says, well, I don't think that I'm necessarily child rearing because, that's a stereotype. I shouldn't be that. So it's like selective, when it benefits, it's like, yeah, men are the villains here. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, at the same time, let's leave women keep that. You don't hear many third wave feminists out there like, we really need to, increase the amount of incarcerated women and have more women that are homeless and have less women that are primary caregivers. You don't hear that, do you?
No, you don't. And honestly, fathers are treated as second grade parents, which honestly is disgusting in my mind, especially when you look at like some of these cases, like they're sending the kid with the woman when the woman has like certain issues that are going to affect the kid, and the dad's pretty well off, and like you're still sending the kid with the woman because the father's the second grade parent, second class parent, and it just comes down to it to where it's hard, and obviously I don't want to like go on this big tirade about men, and yada yada yada, but it is definitely an issue that's affecting society, that's basically what it is. It's definitely an issue affecting society, and in my mind, it's definitely one of the most important.
I'll say this: it's a shame that I have to say this, but it's actually brave that that's a topic that you're going to have a show focusing on, because the heat you're going to get. It's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
You're going to be lumped in. You're going to be an incel. You're going to be, anytime that some misogynist goes out there and harms a woman, you're going to be to blame. So it's sad that we're in that society, but I commend you. I think that is a topic that needs to be discussed. The last question I have from me would be, as a streamer, whether it be in your capacity as a moderator or a panel host or a debater or just someone streaming talking to people, if you could do one show or have one guest that would be sort of your dream guest or show to do, who would it be? And it could be anyone. It could be someone who's an active streamer, or it could be something realistic, like, Donald Trump might not be realistic, but maybe John Burk would be realistic. So, like, what are some ideas of like sort of things that you would really like to do, or shows you'd really like to do, or people you'd really like to do a show with?
You know what? It's not realistic, but I tell you what, it's what brought me to Twitch. It's why I got to Twitch. It's how I got to the next channel, to where I started debating people, because it's an open debate channel, and it's how I got my start. And I've not been able to be on this show. And so the show that I would love to be on is Drunken Debates with John Burk. So that's the show I'd love to be on. Not really realistic because it doesn't exist anymore. So here's to hoping he brings that back, and I get an invite. So
I have good news for you. I actually did a show with John Burk today, and we're discussing doing a regular show, me and him, on Saturdays, where we will have guests. And there's even been talk of bringing back Drunken Debates. And because I know you, I will let him know that you would be interested in that. Now, I don't know. That might take months to get together, but absolutely, I think that you are the type of person that he would like to have on, because he likes people that are independent thinkers, that he knows will be able to have a good faith discussion, even if it's not someone that the issue that he agrees with all the time. So, yeah, you pick someone, if it was me and someone asked me that, I'd be like, Kobe Bryant, that's probably not going to have, Christopher Hitchens, something like that. But that's interesting.
I was watching on YouTube, and like he kept saying, "Come to Twitch, come to Twitch, come to Twitch. Twitch is better." And so like eventually I made my way over to Twitch, and there's like
he's banned now, by the way,
yeah,
from YouTube and Twitch.
Yeah, he's he went over to Twitch, and I went over to Twitch and watched him there. And then like because he did morning shows too, and it was more so the morning show that I was watching too. And I was watching his morning show, and like one of these days I was at work, and it's kind of like my routine that I would like listen to his morning show when I was at work. And that his morning show wasn't on, and I was working from home, and I'm like, okay, well, let's find someone else. So like I went to like suggested channels, click the channel, and it was like an open debate style. Well, little do I know that, you know, I'm gonna hear something that I don't like said, and so I'm gonna see if I can jump in. I get to jump in, and they make me a mod. First time on the channel, first time watcher, first time on, and first time mod. So like it was, and that led to me being on that channel for a long time. And then that led to me creating my own channel. And so really, to be 100% honest, that's what gave me my start. So no, paying tribute back to what gave me my start would be a lot of fun, and I just think it'd be a lot of fun to be on that. So I really do appreciate
I'll see what I can do. I can't make any promises. It's not my show.
I don't expect promises, but what I say is I really appreciate the willingness to stick your neck out for me on that one. So I appreciate it.
And then you'll go on and you'll just like, you know, you've been deep undercover and you're just going to go on and do some like Howard Stern shit and get kicked off immediately. Make me look like an ass. No, I think that's, I'll definitely.
Kanye West.
Yeah, right. I'll throw that out there. We got like 4 more minutes. So I'll give you a chance to sort of talk about your channel, where to find you. We'll also have those links below. But the very last thing I wanted to ask you, it's a question that I get asked a lot, so I'd be interested to hear your opinion. If someone's out there and they're considering starting some sort of political stream, what's like the best piece of advice you could give for someone, regardless of what their political ideology is, on how to start streaming and what they should be focusing on at the beginning?
Oh. Okay, so how to start streaming. Get a camera and a mic. Mic is most important. Camera is second most important. But they're both necessary. I don't care if it's a cheap mic and a cheap camera. Typically, when you're getting 1 to 2 viewers, they won't really care that you have a cheap mic and cheap camera. But that's the best way to get your start. The second best way to get your start is get in people's chats. Talk to people in chat. If you like, obviously you're either in my chat or in robnoerr's. So congratulations, you've completed that step. But go to other people too. You might be like limited to like one person on Twitch. So go to other people. Start building relationships with other streamers, right? And then once you start to stream, they already know you from chat, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah, it'd be great to have a conversation." And so then that will put you to where you can start having conversations with people. And typically they'll be much bigger than you are because you're getting like 1 to 2 viewers, right? So they'll be able to push you to that 50 follower mark, and they'll be able to get you to where you can be an affiliate. And then start working your way up from there. Keep these relationships, and obviously be genuine. No one likes someone who just toes a party's line just for the sake of towing the party line. So if you are going to stream, be genuine, because that's what the audience craves. The audience craves someone who's going to be genuine, who's going to give a take that a lot of people may not agree with right off the bat. And so when people do that, that's what the audience craves, because not only one, does it provide room for disagreement, but 2, it provides entertainment. And so and it provides you the ability to maintain your integrity. So I would say those are probably the biggest pieces of advice I could possibly give to someone who's wanting to start streaming. And man, if you're wanting to start streaming, just don't dip your toe in, just jump in. Like you just gotta start. You have to start. And that's essentially where it starts.
It's great advice. I mean, it sounds simple, like get a mic and a camera. Honestly, though, I had friends that don't give a shit about me politically when I was live streaming 1, 2 viewers. And one of my friends reached out to me and it's like, your mic is unlistenable. It does not matter how good, because I was using like the built-in computer. He's like, it doesn't matter how good your take is. If you're annoying to listen to and you don't already have name recognition, people are skipping right by you. Like, and same's true if you have you don't need a great quality. I think you're right, but you gotta be, able to be heard, because otherwise people are just like, nope, nothing I want to see here, and they're going to switch to it's a dime a dozen. There's a million streamers out there.
I mean, the blue snowball is $50.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure you already have a webcam on your laptop, or if you've got a PC and you don't have a webcam, I don't know what you're doing. But obviously it's not the right thing. So get a webcam if you have a PC without one. But if you have a laptop, you probably already have a webcam. So go ahead, just use that to start off with, and eventually you'll be able to upgrade. And obviously, blue snowball is $50. Go drop that $50 if you want to become a streamer. Trust me, it will be worth it, because you'll be able to actually get good sound that people will want to listen to. If they go to your channel and you're like breaking up and your voice sounds terrible, they'll skip right over you. It doesn't even matter what you're saying, they'll skip right over you, because honestly, it's just more of an annoyance to try and figure out what you're saying or try to listen through the disturbance than it is to just find a different channel that they want to watch. So yeah, it's the biggest piece of advice I could possibly give.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. So, yeah, we've been talking to Sprouticus. He's going to start running his panel show again. He's a frequent guest on a lot of debates that used to be occurring. Like me, has a real life, has a real family, has a real job. So sometimes that stuff interferes, but he's going to be picking up, streaming more. He's going to get that panel show going again. So Sprouticus, just one last time, can you tell everyone how to reach you, what the best platforms are, and sort of what to expect from you here in the coming months?
Yeah, so you can reach me if you want to reach out to me and talk to me. You can obviously reach me via Discord. I have my own Discord. It's kind of dead, so if you go in it, no one's talking, and no one's been talking for several months. I am in Queen Alexa's Discord. I'm in a lot of Discords, so honestly, if you join any political Discord that's been active in Twitch politics, you'll probably find me in there underneath I am Sprouticus or the Sprouticus. So you'll find me in there more than likely. But second of all, you can find me at twitch.tv/thesprouticus and youtube.com/thesprouticus. Actually, I don't think I have that yet. So it's just thesprouticus on YouTube. But then if you can't reach me on Discord, go ahead and hit me up with DMs on Twitch or Twitter. And the next couple months, like I said, I'm going to start back that panel show. I'm working on that podcast. It's just a personal project of mine. And then last but not least, I wanted to take the opportunity here on Rob's show to announce my candidacy for president in 2024. So yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and announce that here at Rob's show. So,
well, thanks. Kanye was in the chat. Now he just left. So thanks so much for that. No, it's been great talking to you. I know it's been a while since we talked. So, and I just want to let the audience know, incredibly generous. This was scheduled for Thursday, and because of me, we had to move it. And I always appreciate, when people are willing to move stuff around, because I know you're busy and you have a life too. So thank you so much, Sprouticus. I look forward to talking to you in the future. And even though I don't like doing the panel shows, I would absolutely do at least one when you get it started. So hit me up if you think I'd be right for a specific topic. I'd be happy to do it. So thanks so much for being here.
Not a problem. Thank you for inviting me, Rob.
All right, we'll see you, man. All right. Good stuff. Give me 1 second here. Maybe. Well, I'll spend a little time with you. But no, I thought it was good. Enjoyed it. And I am very thankful that any of my guests that come on, and very thankful that he rescheduled. So, so Erudite says, so this dumb kid makes me want to slap him in the face. Me? No, I didn't think that he said anything that I massively disagreed with there. And it wouldn't matter if he did. I enjoy talking to Sprouticus, and if what we were talking about when I was on his panel show and me and Stardust sort of had a run in, I was pissed off, not like pissed off at Stardust for what she was saying. I was pissed off that it just became, she just kept shouting over me and I couldn't say anything. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time with this, right? Like, she's shouting over me because she knows I'm right. And she just has to keep shouting over and grandstanding because, and to me, thanks so much, Sprouticus. Thank you so much for the raid. But there's been moderators people that I really like that I've been quite critical of. Mr. Braindead, thank you so much for the follow. One of them's Danabo. I think Danabo is one of the nicest people in this space. He'll help right-wingers, left-wingers. He does a lot of production work. Very nice guy. When Danabo hosted a panel and, who was on there, Demon Mama and shit, I thought it was ridiculous. Like, they're muting me and, I thought it was stupid. And I was just like, Danabo, I think you did a shit job moderating in this particular instance. That doesn't mean I dislike Danabo. With Sprouticus, I didn't think he did a shit job moderating. It was just the way that he was trying out his show. If you don't know, he was talking about a cage match. It's an interesting idea. And the idea is, let's say that you have a panel of 8 people and 2 people start going back and forth. It's like, okay, we're going to do a cage match where it's just only those 2 could talk for like 2 minutes. And then after that 2 minutes, they're both muted for like 2 minutes or 5 minutes so that the conversation can proceed elsewise. Which is an interesting idea. And like I said, I could see what the utility if it works out well. But he was trying it out for the first time. And the idea was in the cage match, if 2 people have, disagreements, like personal disagreements, then you could be like, F you, I hate you, I think you're a bad person, blah, blah, blah. You get that out there. And then once it's done, it's back to the topic at hand. The problem that I saw the way it was operated was it was just her going, like shouting over me. And I couldn't say a word. And I was like, I'm not going to do this shit. That's stupid. I like the idea of sort of this cage match idea, but there has to be some ground rule that it can't just be one person screaming for the full 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it was. But I never had a run-in with Sprouticus where it was like, I hate you. It wasn't like that. I was just like, I'm not going to come back on it. And it, like the cage match, it was like I was challenged like every single time because I'm very opinionated. So a lot of people that wanted to talk one-on-one wanted to talk to me. That was the nature of how that went. But I enjoyed it. Thank you, Mr. Braindead. Says, doesn't agree with me that often, but I'm honest about what I believe. Thank you. I try to impart that. And one of the things I will say, because I know I saw in my chat, people were like, I don't like Sprouticus. He's a liberal on issues. The issues that he said, like abortion and things like that didn't sound too liberal to me. Maybe there's other issues. Funwan was, for example, what issue, what do you think, in your opinion, has Sprouticus said, or Tainted Holy? What are the issues that you've heard him say that you feel was like, oh, dude, you're a lefty? Because the things he said there, I didn't think were that big. But, I'll say that it is, when you go into a platform and you know that the audience is going to expect something, oftentimes, especially if it's coming at you from the side you're not normally used to. It's one thing for me to go on a left-wing panel and be like, I'm just going to bury left-wing issues and causes. That's what I'm going to do. But when I go on the Crucible, those are people that are further to the right than me. Or if I argue with Groypers, they're further to the right than me. And, I know they're going to have these huge audiences that are like, fuck this guy, I don't like this guy. Braindead says, I'm lefty and I mod for Sprout. Friendship's more important than disagreement. Yeah, I mean, the guy that when I ran for Congress, the guy that ran my campaign was my friend Tom. Tom's a Democrat. Tom disagrees with me on many of my particular policy issues, but he also thinks I'm a good guy who actually cares, and so he was willing to support me. That happens. It does. But ultimately, I wish Sprouticus well. And like I said, I'd be willing to do his panel show at least once. It's a very fine line, right? The idea of gays and trans having rights. Like, again, my audience, I would say 60 to 70% of my audience does not like my take on gay marriage. Now I have questions with this new bill that just passed, what the fine print's going to mean, forcing religious institutions to work in the prospect of gay marriage and things like that. I don't like that. But as far as the state, I think they should have to recognize gay marriage. That's what I believe, which was fine before this new bill was passed, as far as I'm concerned. But I understand that a large swath of, a not insignificant section of my audience doesn't like my take on that. That's okay. But, the trans issues specifically, like trans rights, I mean, this is going to get me in trouble on Twitch, but I'll just come out and say it, right? Like, here's the deal with trans rights. Like, I think that trans is an illness. it's either a physical illness or a mental illness, or if you don't want to use the word illness, a disorder, a malfunction. There is something that is not normal. Much like if you were born with 6 fingers, it's a disfigurement, or it is not norm. There's something that's there. If there's a vestigial finger that causes you pain, you would say, well, there's something there. That's not like, oh, no, there is no normal. So, I don't believe that. And so I would say it's prevailing. It's a mental illness. There's something wrong. There's a mental disorder where you think that your brain doesn't match up with your body. But maybe I'll be proven wrong, and we'll be able to definitively prove that actually that's not true. It's a physical ailment. That actually the brain is in the wrong body. Even still, in both cases, it's an ailment. And I don't treat people like shit because they have illnesses. My job is dealing with people with developmental disabilities, autism or other disabilities that causes sort of maybe low IQ or low communication skills or, significant physical health problems. I don't treat them like garbage because of that. In fact, some of the most influential people in my life are people that have had autism that I look at as some of the greatest people I've ever met. But that doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, that means autism's great. And that everything has to now be changed so that autism could be the norm. Imagine I say this all the time. It's like, you have this idea of like, well, we have to change sports to allow people, male to female, trans people to participate in female athletics. We have to change that. And, we have to change our restroom policies. And I say one of the aspects of autism, a lot of people have difficulty with halogenic lights or with loud sounds. Does that mean we're going to eliminate all car horns and all lights that you see in the supermarket and stuff like that? Is that what we're going to do? Are we going to have a baseline of like, and how far are you willing to go with this? Because there could be all sorts of people. Well, what about this particular ailment? This particular ailment says that, the ding on the cash register or cell phones going off, it causes them extreme pain and anxiety. So we got to get rid of all cell phones. Like at some point you have to say like, yeah, it sucks. This is a condition. It's an illness or a condition or a disorder. But I don't treat you like crap because of that. I just am not going to buy into, as far as I'm concerned, trans issues, it's like you have a mental disorder. It's no different to me than if you're bipolar. Am I going to be like, I'm not going to have a beer with this person because they're bipolar. I don't trust them. I think they're a freak. Of course not. Or schizophrenic. But I'm not going to listen to the schizophrenic tell me that I now have to be forced to believe that the voices they hear are real. And if I don't, then I should be censored. That's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Now, you're just wrong, Tope. You're absolutely wrong. He says, if it's a case that it's a disorder, then how come the highest suicide rates of LGBTQ people are often due to outside pressures, usually their family not accepting them? Prove it. Let's see that study, right? How was that study compiled? How do you know what the factors were? Yeah, it could be that someone committed suicide because there was outside pressure. It could also be they committed suicide because they had significant depression issues. Many of the people that are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, particularly at a young age, are also diagnosed with depression, bipolar disorder, and other sorts of disorders. For a mental disease, it seems awfully biased. It doesn't seem awfully biased. We can see that the rates for these people are incredibly higher when it comes to things like depression, incredibly higher when it comes to other mental health illnesses, incredibly higher when it comes to suicidality rates. And to just hand wave and say, oh, it's all because of lack of acceptance is nonsense. That's not true. Lack of acceptance could contribute to this, but to act like there are no mental disorders that come with this is nonsense. Furthermore, it doesn't even matter if it's a mental disorder that doesn't lead to self-harm or something like that. It's still clearly a mental disorder. There is some sort of disorder. And if you don't believe that, then I presume that you're advocating highly against, what is it, the DSM-5 now, declaring gender dysphoria some sort of illness. And if that's the case, then all of your insurance plans that cover sort of trans issues, trans therapy, trans drugs, trans surgery should all be removed because it's purely cosmetic. It's not to deal with an illness, right? Is that what you advocate for? No, you want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to say, no. The insurance companies should be forced to cover the drugs, the hormone therapy. They should be forced to cover the gender surgeries. They should be forced to cover therapies and things like that. But it's not an illness. It's just purely cosmetic or purely, a choice. It has nothing to do with being a disorder or an illness. It's bullshit. We all know it. Everyone knows it. He says Ted Cruz's daughter was raised conservative, yet she attempted suicide. It's clearly not a disorder, it's a way of life. What does that whataboutism have anything to do with anything? Of course, yes, there are people that aren't transgender that attempt suicide. That's horrific, of course. What does that have to say with whether or not being trans is some sort of disorder? So I have no issue with treating people humanely, even if they have things that are disorders. I myself am probably somewhat autistic, probably somewhat bipolar. It runs in my family. That's probably true. But I'm undiagnosed. But I'm not going to treat people like garbage because they have disorders. I don't do that. That doesn't mean that I believe that objective reality doesn't exist. You could be censored for, quote, misgendering people and for not agreeing with the idea that there's biological reality to sex, and that's absurd. But that doesn't mean that I think that there shouldn't be, that trans people should be like, you're not allowed to work here and stuff like that. Mr. Braindead says, yeah, but robnoerr, after getting therapy and affirming that it's an issue, people could seek gender-affirming care. I've seen children who refuse to wear gender-appropriate clothing and disregard gender-appropriate items. That's when you seek therapy. From there, you see if it's a phase or if they're trans. Then you go to work to take steps to make sure they get the care they need and make it through puberty and adulthood without harm. The problem is with children. That's the issue. For example, according to WPATH, which is sort of the holy grail of treatment for trans issues and what's being recommended, their numbers suggested something like, depending on the study, 89 to 94% of kids that are sent for gender dysphoria treatment grow out of it without any pharmacological interventions whatsoever. So the question is, if that's true, that 94% of people that doctors say, oh, you have gender dysphoria, and they send to start to receive some sort of therapy, grow out of that phase without taking hormone blockers or without taking surgeries and things like that. Does that mean that the doctors that are recommending these to that other 6% are insanely accurate? Because the detransition numbers are incredibly low. It's like once you start on hormone blockers, you almost always keep going with it. I wonder why. Well, maybe it's because if you never go through the natural puberty that you would have went through, then you don't know what your baseline would be, and so you have nothing to compare it to. My wife's yelling at me because I said I'd be done. I'll wrap it up here in like 10 minutes. Intro says the DSM-5 articulates explicitly gender nonconformity is not itself a mental disorder. I know what the DSM-5 says. The DSM-5 are people that are trying to be political about this, and they're trying to say, oh, if a transgender person wants these sort of treatments, then they could get those treatments because in that case it's an illness, but it's not an illness if they determine that it's not an illness when they feel like talking about it. They also define gender dysphoria. I believe the language it uses is a discomfort with your gender. Can you explain to me how, so if you have discomfort with your birth gender, that means that you have an illness of gender dysphoria. Can you explain to me how a person knows they're trans if they do never have any discomfort regarding their gender? Because according to the DSM-5, as soon as they have that discomfort, then it's gender dysphoria and it's an illness. Right, only 5% of the people that detransition. Yeah, that's not responsive to anything that I'm saying here. The indoctrination of these children, and there's obvious benefits to transitioning. Right? They break people down with sort of this social emotional learning that occurs in schools. They tell them that their assigned gender is a binary choice and that it's wrong. They tell them that it's cool to, that there are sort of social clouts you get for being a victim and getting those points to be different and to embrace these sort of groups. There are schools now that something like 92% of young adolescents say that they are no longer in a traditional gender accepting role or sexuality accepting role. So you go through these schools where it's like 4/5 of the people are lesbians or gay or transgender. Are we to believe that that's really the case? And what they'll say is, well, that's because the pressure of society always said that they weren't that way. And so they were afraid to come out. It's bullshit. It is quite self-evidently bullshit. I'm happy for the left to die on this hill. The mutilation of children and the pharmacological interventions that are irreparable and cause irreparable harm to them is monstrous. It needs to be condemned in the strongest possible way. We're repeatedly told, for example, that the UK has a better health system than us. Even in the UK, the National Institute of Health in the UK has looked at the best studies, the most longitudinal studies that have been done. They looked at something like 18 of them and confirmed that they do not have evidence to have confidence in that, and it's tantamount to testing on children without a breadth of research, and when you're forcing them to take these drugs that oftentimes are irreparable. And we're hearing more and more every day that even people that are involved in trans issues are saying now there are several, that it's becoming more and more common to just accept, yep, gender affirming care means whatever they say we go with. Also, there's a financial benefit to these doctors doing this because once you start someone on trans treatments, you have a patient for life. So when you see people, even doctors in the community that were the forefront of issuing drugs for people for trans issues are now saying it used to be we would give this to 2 to 3% of people. Now we see doctors that are giving it to 40, 50% of people, and something's wrong. So the idea, what do you mean if it's a disorder, then why is 90% of the detransition are outside factors? Again, how do you know that? Because they self-reported that? I didn't dismiss the evidence. I talked about the evidence specifically. You're citing evidence from reports that places like the UK said they did not have confidence in because there haven't been long-term. And we see more and more that people that did detransition talk about their stories and say we're afraid to come out publicly because the very people in the trans community that once stuck up for us now treat us like persona non gratas because they say we're attacking trans people by coming out with our story about why we detransitioned and we felt that the transition was forced upon us or misled to us. So there's an incentive for these people from outside factors to not want to come out and admit why they detransitioned and talk about it, right? And that's what's going on. Even if the majority of people that transition decide to stick with the transition, I've already explained. How can you explain the fact that 94% of adolescents that don't take pharmacological interventions that are diagnosed with gender dysphoria or treatment necessary for gender dysphoria grow out of it without pharmacological interventions? What people like Toto would want you to believe is this. The same doctors that misdiagnose people with ADHD or with painkiller medications and opioid prescriptions, which the left will talk about all the time, the overprescriptions of opioids and the pharmaceutical industry and how they overprescribe medications and work with doctors to do this. Those same doctors, miraculously, when it comes to one issue, are right almost every single time. And that issue has to be treatment and pharmacological interventions for trans people. How else would you explain it? 94% of kids that don't go through the transit, that never take these medications, inevitably go back to the gender assigned at birth, the gender that matches with their sexual reality, what their biological sex is. 94%. Yet for some reason, once we start these people on the hormone therapy, they almost never transition back. And the left says, see, that proves that the transition works. Does it? Or does that prove that when you force people to not go through puberty, then they never have the impetus to say, I want to go back to what my gender would have been? So my explanation is those numbers seem to suggest that what's happening is these interventions are forcing the change in people. That's what's happening. Toto would say, no, that's not true. What it is in this one area only, the doctors are remarkable at knowing exactly what children really are trans. They get it right almost every time. That's why they never go back. Mr. Braindead says it's not about children, it's about erasing trans. No one wants to erase trans people. That's exactly what I was talking about. It's what Sprouticus was talking about. None of us feel that trans people don't have the right to exist or their problems shouldn't have been dealt with and things like that. You say, in my opinion, drag shows are very mild, much like the stuff we've seen in movies for years, even to children. Drag shows are uniquely a sexual performance. That's what they're about. We've seen drag shows over and over again that show the sexuality of them. The idea of drag was sort of a perversion of, and I don't say that word derogatively, like drag was designed much like kink was to publicly sort of poke fun at what we consider traditional sexual values. And so that sort of drag performance is one that is designed to convince kids, and it's being done specifically to kids, not just of a sexual nature, which it occurs many times, it is a sexual nature, but even beyond that, is to convince kids against this binary reality of sex. It is indoctrination to them. That's what it is. And when we could see, one of the things that gets me about the people that say this, right? That's like, well, actually, the drag shows aren't that big a deal. I could show you dozens upon dozens of examples. It's not going to lick itself. Here's a guy in drag that's genitals can be seen, that's wearing a thong in front of 6-year-old kids. Here's kids putting money in their G-string. And it's so odd to me that the people that want to defend drag shows, you don't see them very vocally being like, holy shit, that's horrific. That example right there is horrific. Someone needs to step in and do something. They're always like, well, they're not all like that. Yeah, once is too many times. That's how I feel. And if I saw something like that and was like, holy shit, okay, normally I don't condemn this, but this example, wow, it's occurring. And look, it's occurring again. It's occurring quite frequently. I would be highly disturbed by that. But no, the people just say there's nothing sexual about it. If it's not, if some guy wants to wear a dress and go read a book in front of a kid, okay. As long as it's not a sexual nature dress, that's fine. I don't want a woman showing up to read to kids in a bikini either. So if it's a conservative dress, fine. But if I'm drag and I think that it's very important to read to children, I could show up in clothes that aren't drag. Right? Just like if I'm a football player and I want to read to kids, I don't have to show up in my football uniform. They're doing it in drag, and more importantly than that, they're doing these drag shows because that is the point. It's about indoctrinating the children into those sorts of lifestyles. That's what it's about. No, that's fine. You're right. Conservatives are losing because the Republican Party, the establishment Republican Party is terrible. And there's a bunch of corrupt things that go with all these institutions that I talk about in my show all the time. Corruption in these institutions of all of them working together to push the same establishment narrative. I think it's funny that people on the left are like, oh, well, conservatives keep losing. Right. And you keep losing too because you continue to push for elites that will fuck you and the people that you support over at the drop of a hat. You just think it's cool right now because Orange Man bad and conservatives are bad, but you're too stupid to see that like every time that we have this sort of fascist conglomeration between massive state power and corporate power, that it ends up going bad for the very people that cheered it on all the while. You're not one of the elites, Toto, and you're going to get fucked over and your loved ones as well. But enjoy your inflation and enjoy your lockdown and enjoy the fact that we could see the health exasperation of all the things that came from that and the inflation and the fact that people can't afford food and enjoy the crime wave and all of that stuff and the fentanyl overdose because you're really getting what you want. When I say the hill we're dying on, it might be true that the Republican Party and conservatives aren't winning a lot, but one of the issues they're winning on is these trans issues, is the drag queen story hour. They're winning on that. So you go ahead and you keep pushing it. I'm more than happy. I hope this becomes front and center. I hope this is the hill that the left continues to want to die on. That's absolutely fine with me. I think it's disgusting that that's the hill that they want to be on, but if they're going to be on it, I hope that they're very vocal about it because I think that you'll start to see that the pendulum's swinging the other way. And even people that traditionally consider themselves Democrats and left-leaning think that this is a bridge too far. So if the radical people on the left want to say, I don't have a problem with the man dressing in a G-string and stripping in front of children, I think that that's perfectly acceptable. And I don't have a problem with mutilating 9-year-old children and chopping off their breasts and putting them on hormone blockers. I don't have a problem with that. By all means, continue to make those arguments. I'll be happy to rebut them like any sane person would be able to do and be happy to talk about how monstrous those beliefs are. Simultaneously, I'm not going to treat trans people terribly because of their affliction. And as far as I'm concerned, as an adult, as long as the doctors are being fair and honest about the possible side effects of medications and surgeries and things like that, I think an adult should be allowed to make whatever choice they want. If they choose that they want to have their genitals cut off and put inside out so that they can feel like they have a vagina, more power to them. I'll sit there and drink a beer next to the person. I don't care. Hell, I'll even use the pronouns they want as long as it's in polite conversation and they're not being a dick about it. I'm not going to treat them like crap about that. It's absolutely fine with me. But that's an adult. Forcing this shit on children is disgusting. Puberty blockers are not reversible, as once more the National Institute of Health in the UK has ruled that the evidence suggesting that puberty blockers aren't reversible is not true. In fact, you could look at the WPATH evidence in itself. If puberty blockers are reversible, can you explain to me why 94% of kids that aren't put in puberty blockers eventually grow out of it, but almost every single one that are put on puberty blockers don't? Thank you, Mr. Braindead. I appreciate the subscription. That clearly shows that even in that issue, right, when it comes to the issue of, well, will you go back? Because think about it. We talk about all the increased harms. You hear this all the time, right? Well, trans people are more likely to commit suicide, and trans people are more likely to have depression, and trans people this and trans people that. So if you're forcing someone to be trans because before their brain was developed enough to make these decisions, you said, no, you should be on puberty blockers, so you stopped the natural occurrence of puberty from occurring, and then that led to the decision of them saying, okay, I never want to go through that puberty and I'll keep transitioned when otherwise they wouldn't have, then you've just forced them into a life that's going to be very difficult. No, Republicans didn't vote. Again, one of the first things Biden did was revoke Donald Trump's executive order that was lowering insulin cost, right? I love how this has occurred. Remember, for example, when the Democrats passed the big spending package under Biden, one of the big spending packages, and one of the things that was specifically amendments that were specifically put on there were taxing was like these IRS agents can't go after low income people. They can only go after people that make over $100,000 a year. Oh, I guess that proves that all Democrats only want to go after poor people, right, when it comes to the taxes. It's easy to play this game. I'm not saying my opinion. These people act like, and again, I'm glad to have people like you on there because what you don't understand is there are a lot of people that traditionally won't agree with me on certain issues. They might not agree with me on my stance on vaccine mandates or my stance on the Ukraine war or my stance on sort of all sorts of things that would lean to me being more fiscally conservative. They might not agree with those, but they absolutely despise the people that want to indoctrinate children, and they despise the people that want to mutilate children, and they despise the people that cheer for sexual performances occurring in front of children. And I'm glad that you think the science is on your side. The science is on the side of saying that is bullshit science. It's done by profiteers that understand that this sort of science, I mean, there are literally people that are out there saying that are putting this science forward, saying there is no biological distinction between the two sexes, that there's not only two sexes. You're being censored by Automod. I see what you're saying. Mr. Braindead, you're not hearing me. Once you're on them, you very rarely go off them. Again, if you could see a crystal ball, and let's say when I was 10, I was like, I like dresses. And my parents said, great, here's some puberty blockers. And you could see, if Rob's not put on these puberty blockers, in 2 years, he'll say, oh, I don't feel like a girl anymore. But if we do put him on the puberty blockers, then he'll keep saying, I'm a girl the rest of his life. Then it's not reversible. If that occurs over and over again, which that's what the evidence suggests. Right, Tote says, your party, your conservative platform got bodied this cycle. Yeah, the Republicans are bad. I'm more populist than conservative. I get bodied every single time. The corruption continues to run apace. The difference between me and you is just because my arguments and my ideology might not win elections doesn't mean that I stop advocating for it. You think you're a winner. Why? Because Joe Biden won? How's that working out? I love the good lefties. Homicide rates will continue to grow apace in inner cities. People will continue to die of fentanyl overdoses. Life will get shitty for the very poorest people that they claim to advocate for. But hey, as long as a person with the right letter next to their name won, then they feel like a winner. That's great. How's Joe Biden doing for that progressive agenda there? Doing real fucking good, huh? But that's how they feel like a winner. That's the difference between me and so many of you people on the left. I can understand. My person's never, fuck, I'm a Ron Paul supporter. I get bodied every time. So, doesn't mean that I'm wrong. Sure, that's why Biden supporters fly flags and paint their trucks right after the election cycle is over. I don't know what you're talking about. Surely you're referencing something specific that I have no idea what you're talking about. I know this, when I talk to people on the left, most of them say no one really likes Pelosi, no one really likes Biden. They're just better than the alternative. And so if you think that it's some big victory because a corrupt institution where almost all of the mainstream media, social media, academia, the entertainment industry, the FBI, the State Department, corporate America, and Silicon Valley all push the same bullshit, including lying and censoring people that are critical of them, forcing people to lock down, forcing inflation, causing one of the greatest transfers of wealth from the poor and working class to the upper class. If you think that's a fucking victory because you think Orange Man is bad, more power to you. I hope your life goes successful, but I can tell you this, millions of people that voted the way you did are doing worse right now than they were doing in 2019. And you're happy for it because you're one of those people like Bill Maher that was hoping when the person you didn't like was in office that people's life was miserable. You probably cheered on the COVID. You probably cheered on the violence that was occurring, the riot that was coming from predominantly left-wingers, because anything, you were like Bill Maher and said, I hope we have a depression. Anything to take out Orange Man bad. That's the difference difference between me and you. Even when someone I don't like is elected in office, I still cheer for the country and I still cheer for people's lives to be good. But you don't. And you think it's some sort of smackdown because it's like my political party won. Again, if you're someone who's cheering first and foremost for a political party, then you're fucking ridiculous. What's your political ideology? You might vote Democrat, but would you consider yourself a progressive? Would you consider yourself a socialist? Would you consider yourself a corporate Dem? What do you consider yourself? Because I can tell you right now, the Democrats that are in party, it's not or in power. It's not Joe Biden. It's Ron Klain and people that are running the party. It's people with places like the FBI. Is that what you're cheering for? Do you really want to bomb more brown people? Is that what you're down for? More power to you if that's what it takes to make sure that your side's really winning. But the truth is that you're not even at that level of intelligence. Instead, you're at the intelligence of, I'm Democrat and the other side's Republican, so if the Democrats win, I win. Meanwhile, I'm doing whole shows saying even if the Republicans win in the midterms, that's not a victory for us necessarily, because it has to be that they do the right sorts of policies when they get in office. I don't spike the football that it's some sort of win just because someone with a letter next to their name won. That's not what you do, though, because you can't keep up with it intellectually. So you just say, haha, my side won, but you can't argue on the specifics of the issues, and you refuse to look at how terrible things are getting for the average person in this country, and you'll make excuses for them. Even though Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, I'll bet your ass as things got worse here that you weren't blaming them. I'll bet you're saying it's Trump's fault, it's COVID's fault, it's Russia's fault, everyone's fault but the people that are in positions of power. That's what you said. But it doesn't matter, because if people are suffering, as long as your side's in power, that's a good thing. And that should be the Democratic motto throughout, right? Decades of running these inner cities, as we're told the systemic racism's there, keeping people of color down, violence rates going up, people struggling, saying that there's systemic racism going. And yet, as long as Democrats win, they look at that as that's some sort of victory. But thanks for playing. Anyways, I told my wife I'd be done in 10 minutes, 20 minutes ago, so she's going to kill me. I'm going to let you go. You will not see me stream tomorrow. I will not be on here. Friday, I will be streaming early. That'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern time, so you'll see me on here early. I will be debating someone, I can't even remember their name. Crowd something politics. I can't remember. Let me see. Damn. I don't say that to be rude. I legitimately am forgetting their name. Let me see if I can find that real quick for you. So maybe you want to check out what they're saying. It is God damn it. Crowdsource Politics. You can find them on Twitter their Twitter handle is Crowdsource Politics. Something like that. At Crowdsource Politics. So you can find them there. The first hour of that, I've agreed that I'll talk about what any topic he wants. The second hour, we're going to be talking about FBI corruption, specifically in regards to January 6th. Of course, Toe couldn't answer the question. They're wrong on this issue. And it's one of the things that they constantly do this. They control these institutions like academia, and then they point to them as authority figures. But when you start to ask, it's the same thing they did with COVID. Well, the vaccine's good. Everyone says it. And then they censor actual people that disagree with it. It's the same sort of shit. They browbeat you and say, because they control these institutions, they point to those institutions as the authority figures. And even when you bring up rational points as to why what they're saying is stupid, like literally the authority figures in this field say there is no biological distinction between men and women. Many of the people that are recommending trans surgeries and things like that for children make those sorts of claims. That is a claim on its face that is nonsense. Well, you can't answer anything, either. You want to come on and talk to me about how great the Democratic Party is? I'm booked up next week, but be more than happy to have you on anytime that I'm available. More than happy. So I will be debating Crowdsource Politics 7 p.m. Eastern time. Saturday. Let's see if I could raid someone and then we'll get out of here. If you wanted to do me a favor, one thing you could do is please consider following me on Rumble. I'll be able to start live streaming on Rumble if I get 100 subscribers. I'm close. I think I'm at like 71. So it doesn't cost you any money. Just go there. Even if you never want to watch me on Rumble, it would really be doing me a favor if you could subscribe to me on Rumble. And also, a lot of my videos that you see on YouTube end up going to Rumble. And unlike YouTube, Rumble's not going to censor them. So please consider going over there and, give me a like and a follow there. I would really appreciate it. So, all right. Who was I rating? Let's see who's on. Let's do Aircraft Sparky. Let's see who's on. Sorry. How much you want to bet Sparky's wrapping up his stream? This always happens. I raid someone and they're like, "Oh, we're just ended," but yeah, that's absolutely. Come on, how's that an invalid name? Yeah, it's okay to disagree with people, and I mean, if you're a free thinker, there should be no one in the history of the world that you totally agree with. No political party, you know. So obviously you're going to have disagreements with people. All right. Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please consider giving me a follow on Rumble. We will see you all Friday. As always, have a good one.
Why not? So,
Zero, that explains why nobody wants to work beside you.
gassy motherfucker.
Oh,
like you
man.
have any room to talk.